One Piece Supreme Control, Chapter 621-640. Chapter 621-Subversion. Cultivation. Ling Yi was taken aback, here. In fact, he already knew that for the individuals in front of him, the ordinary climate environment could not help them at all. Although this desert is terrifying, it is only for him. What can it do to this guy? That's right, it's cultivation. Today, Seiya is going to fight and learn from Kurayat. Daedalus said excitedly, it's definitely not possible in other places. Their fighting power is too strong. Even if it is just a general release of power, a city may can't stand it. Only this desert with a huge area can barely be used. Ling Yi was speechless. Is it so scary? The two guys mentioned seemed to have become gods. In the desert, the figures of several people slowly descended and landed in the desert. Kurayat, it's been a long time since I turned into a Super Saiyan, and I haven't fought an equal opponent. I have been following the Great Elder all the time. His strength is too strong, and I have no chance at all. But this time, I didn't expect you to reach this stage, which surprised me and made me very happy. Seiya said with a smile. Seiya, I may not be your opponent now, but I, Kurayat, will not admit defeat easily. Don't forget, I'm also a Super Saiyan now. Kurayat was still smiling in the first half of the sentence, but in the second half of the sentence, his face was cold. You two, start quickly. We can't wait. Stoyart clasped his hands and shouted from the sky. They're all in a hurry, haha. Seiya laughed, moving his hands and shouting loudly, then let's start. For a moment, both of them stared at each other tightly. It's about to start. Daedalus' words made Ling Yi nervous, staring at the field. Both of them are extremely powerful. Ling Yi had played against Seiya, and had a deep experience, but he had a hunch that it might be just the tip of the iceberg of the other party, and he had never seen its truly powerful strength. In the field, the two looked at each other, the wind whistled in their ears, and the grains of sand hit their faces. At this moment, the spirit of the two people condensed to the limit. Without saying a word, the atmosphere at the scene was strangely dignified, which made several people watching the battle nervous. The powerful physical body has brewed a powerful spiritual coercion. If you stand in front of a person with a strong body, he will give you an overwhelming majesty involuntarily. At this moment, Ling Yi was pulled in by the aura of the two, sweating nervously. Compared to the two on the field, his weakness is simply too much. Call. Suddenly, the breeze blew, and the grains of sand floated up and fell to the ground. When I looked again, the two figures in the field had disappeared. The next moment, only a loud bang was heard, and a huge airwave spread out from the place where the two touched. The desert boiled, and golden sand particles flew up in the sky, spreading in all directions. A distance, it was as if a huge desert made up of a desert was roaring and churning in an instant. My God! Looking at the sky full of sand in front of him, Ling Yi opened his mouth wide, speechless in shock. Daedalus grabbed him and shouted, "Fuck me, let's go." Then, it rose toward the sky, and in a blink of an eye, it was out of the range shrouded by the sand curtain. Ling Yi and Daedalus stood high in the sky and looked down. Because the sand covered them, they couldn't see the specific situation of the two. However, the desert was constantly spreading towards the periphery, and the bullet-like sand particles were clearly seen by them. It's just the aftermath of the fight, but it can cause such a big momentum. This simply subverted Ling Yi's inner understanding of a person's strength. He never thought that living things would reach such a terrifying state. Bang 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 bang. A series of sounds like muffled thunder came out, and shock waves continued to appear in the desert. Suddenly, a figure swept across the sky of sand and flew out. His tough and powerful body was not injured even if it touched the terrifying sand particles like bullets. After whistling for a full 3 kilometers, the figure suddenly stagnated and stopped in the air. Immediately after, another figure rushed out of the desert-shrouded curtain and reached the top of the previous figure's head at an extremely fast speed. Kurayat, you are very nice. With a loud roar, the latter voice slammed down with a heavy punch. Karayat's eyes narrowed, and his hands slammed in front of him. Bang! A huge sound came out, and the desert below Karayat sank with a hum, and a large pit with a range of 5 kilometers appeared. Ah! After blocking the blow, Karayat also roared out in anger, and suddenly swung a punch towards the sky. With a loud bang, the two finished fighting again. The wind was howling, and electric sparks flickered between the two. The momentum was astonishing. Afterwards, they kept throwing punches, kicking legs, and quickly fighting with extremely high-speed movements. The two fought at close range, and the sound of bang 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 kept coming out, making the sky tremble and tremble. It's so scary. Ling Yi looked at all this, his heart trembled. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. After fighting for half an hour, the two of them were more or less painted, but their faces became more and more excited. It's really hearty, Saya said happily. The warm-up is over. Now, it's time to see your true strength. Come on, I didn't expect you to be so powerful after being by your master's side for so many years. Karayat said solemnly. Come on, let's see how big the gap is between you and me. Saya said loudly. After 2 sentences, the expressions of both of them became cold, and their momentum began to rise rapidly. I'm going to transform. Dada said excitedly. What? Ling Yi asked suspiciously. But Dara ignored him, instead staring down attentively. Seeing this, Ling Yi also stared at the bottom. Gradually, the sand particles floating in the sky seemed to stop, floating quietly in the air, pinched in the air by an invisible force. Ha! At the same moment, the two of them began to shout loudly. Just when this loud roar was heard, the huang sand that was still in the sky suddenly exploded and flew towards the sky. Chapter 622-3rd Realm. Crackling. The fine golden lightning also began to shine in the air. The terrifying momentum rose from the bodies of the two, and the entire huge desert began to be restless. In front of Ling Yi's crowd, there were huang sand covering their eyes, making them unable to open their eyes. The two people who were staring at each other closely, began to surround themselves with fine golden lightning, jumping up and down. The intimidating aura pervaded this desert, causing countless tiny creatures to flee in panic. Ah! The two of them let out a loud roar at the same time, and the terrifying momentum slammed again. After the terrifying lightning flashed, they originally had black hair, their eyebrows, poof, turned golden, and their pupils turned pale green. A grim aura enveloped them. This. Ling Yi stood in the air, completely speechless in shock. This is the Super Saiyan. Dadala said excitedly. As soon as the two of them finished speaking, Saya and Karayat below had already fought together. Their speed has completely surpassed the limit that other people's sights can accommodate. At this moment, the figures of the two have completely disappeared from their eyes. Boom! In the 5,000-meter-high sky in the west, there was suddenly a loud crashing sound, and everyone's attention quickly shifted. After the transfer, there was another sound from somewhere in the east. The sound of boom 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 kept ringing, and their eyes kept shifting. The sky continued to appear distorted halos due to violent collisions, and layers of halos bloomed, bringing out huge airflow surging. Ha! Suddenly, a sharp sound sounded, and a stream of light descended from the sky, but in an instant, it collided with the ground, and there was a sound of rumbling, and the desert immediately began to shatter, and a large pit appeared. Immediately after, another stream of light descended, slamming into the big crater on the ground, making a violent collision sound. With a bang, the big pit was even bigger, followed by 2 streamer silhouettes. It was Saya and Kalayat. They moved quickly on the ground at a terrifying speed. Both of them were on their toes, and in just a split second, they had already retreated or advanced thousands of meters. The fists are constantly waving, the figures are staggered, and the speed is dazzling. In this battle, the few people who looked at the sky were very excited. This is a Super Saiyan. Dadala murmured, too powerful, I must train to become a Super Saiyan. Secretly clenching his fists, Daedalus swore in his heart. Ling Yi had already been shaken so much that his whole body was shaking. Looking at these two people, he almost thought that these two guys were like gods. What is Piccolo? What is Sun Wukong? These two guys are terrifying and terrifying beings. In the face of such a strong man, I am afraid that the heart will not even raise the emotion of resistance. Huh. A dazzling light suddenly bloomed. Ling Yi's eyes narrowed, staring down. I saw that both of them stretched out and out with one hand, and the light blue qigong wave was formed in an instant, and then went towards each other. Boom. The monstrous flames swelled. Dadara grabbed Ling Yi, and the two lifted off again. The flames were overwhelming and developed into a mushroom cloud. The instantly formed qigong wave contained majestic energy, and it broke out with just a single introduction. The qigong wave formed in such a short period of time has such terrifying power. These two guys. Too powerful. Ling Yi's heart was shocked. This was too terrifying for him. But even after hitting the qigong wave with the two people, in the next moment, a fierce confrontation was launched in the monstrous flames. Their fists slammed towards each other fiercely, making a bang 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 sound. These two are simply invincible warriors. They can survive in the fire. Their powerful nerves are terrifying, like the invincible god of war, not afraid of anything. In a battle, the two fought from morning to afternoon, and at the end, they fought for 7 or 8 hours before it ended with Seiya winning. Next time, I won't lose to you again. Kurayat fell to the ground panting, staring at Seiya. Seiya's face was also bruised and bruised. The two were evenly matched. He had used all his strength to defeat Kurayat. Hee, next time, I will be even stronger. Sai also said confidently. Ling Yi, carry Kurayat on your back, it's time for us to go back. Seiya greeted. Ling Yi was taken aback, and immediately ran over, carrying Kurayat on his back. Hoo. Feeling Kurayat's heavy breathing, Ling Yixin also understood. This guy who is as powerful as a god, also has such a weak time. A quarter of an hour later, Ling Yi took a heavy breath after putting Kurayat in the recuperation tank. He walked to Seiya's side, who was eating heavily at this time. Brother Seiya. Suddenly, Ling Yi spoke up. Huh, Seiya replied vaguely while eating. You're already so strong, then, that master. Ling Yi asked hesitantly. In his opinion, Yangqing is really unremarkable, and it seems to be far worse than Seiya and Kurayat. But subconsciously told him that with such a powerful apprentice, Yangqing himself would be more. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Horrible. Master. Dudori came over at this time and laughed. Master, he is the #1 powerhouse of our Saiyans, at the same time. After a pause, Dudori adored again. Master, he is also the #1 powerhouse in the universe. Although he is not well known, in fact we all know that the Master's strength is already #1 in the universe. A few words shocked Ling Yi, and his head went blank. Universe. First. Strong. I can't imagine that my master could be such a terrible person. This made Ling Yi feel like he was hit by a huge stone. Oh no, he almost lost consciousness when he was hit. His mind kept replaying the thin man who always had a faint smile on his face, and he didn't even have the slightest breath. He still couldn't believe that his master was such a terrifying guy. Master is terrible, you won't understand. If our Super Saiyan is just the beginning of the first stage, then the master is probably on the edge of the third stage. Seiya drank the soup in one breath and said with a sigh. That's what he didn't mean to mention to me that day. Chapter 623-King Class. After listening to what Seiya said, Ling Yixin's shock has reached an incomparable level. So, you must cultivate well. Originally, based on your bloodline of Earthlings, it is impossible for you to cultivate to a level as powerful as our Saiyans in a lifetime. However, the Great Elder seems to have some way for you to break the limit and go further. Work hard, boy. It may be difficult to surpass me, but as a disciple of the Great Elder, it is still very easy for you to stand on the top of the earth. Seiya turned his head and comforted Ling Yi. Secretly clenching her fists, Ling Yixin gave birth to an ambition called becoming stronger. Now that he has seen how big the world is, how could he give up so willingly? I can be as strong as them too. Gritting his teeth, Ling Yi made up his mind. From this day on, Ling Yi entered the process of crazy cultivation. And his next madness shocked Seiya and others. In fact, although their cultivation is hard, they will still rest. Only by combining work and rest can they make better and faster progress. But Ling Yi then completely gave up all rest time. When they are cultivating, this guy is cultivating, and when they are resting, this guy is still cultivating. Just being in a severe coma, they stuff the latter into the recuperation tank a full 83 times. But with Ling Yi's crazy cultivation, his progress is also obvious. He is making leaps and bounds every day, and the natural physical limits of Earth people are smashed by him one by one and turned into scum. Over time, he became stronger and stronger. In a quiet and deep void in the universe, there is a huge and incomparable vortex suspended. This vortex is complex in color and flickering with light. It is colorful like a crystal, exuding a mysterious light. His size is thousands of light years, and even hundreds of millions of light years in diameter, standing there like a galaxy, slowly rotating. After 25 days, the divine vortex of Yang Qing's incarnation finally completely devoured Abino's huge divine nature. His divinity is as huge and grand as the Milky Way at the moment, exuding a majestic and intense pressure light. It was just hovering and spinning there quietly, but the surrounding void was distorted. This is a galaxy of gods, so gorgeous and beautiful that anyone can be mesmerized. Void, a pair of eyes suddenly opened. Buzz. A large area of void began to collapse, and the huge beautiful vortex began to collapse and shrink in a large area, heading towards the most central point. This speed is very fast, as if within 1,000th of a second, and as if it is only 1/1000th of a second, the magical transformation has been completed. The huge galactic vortex turned into a god emitting 5 colors of light. This god stands in the universe. It is not huge, but it is also as magnificent as a planet. It was Yang Qing who stood in the void and slowly opened his eyes. A great pressure radiated out in all directions as his eyes opened and closed. King level. Devouring the divinity of Abinos, I have entered the world king level. Yang Qing's eyes flickered and he murmured. Feeling his more condensed spirit, his whole body radiated a color like glass, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of Yang Qing's mouth. This is an incomparably cohesive and powerful spirit. In the depths of his body, the blood of the gods seems to have bloomed countless brilliance, which makes his understanding of power and the universe more profound. Glancing at the surrounding void, he took a few deep breaths towards the front. A large piece of 5-color thin cloud-like things was sucked into his body by him, and assimilated in an instant, becoming his own power. Well, the divinity of Abinos has been completely digested by me. Come down, it's time to go back and see those boys. It's been a month. I don't know if their strength has advanced. Yang Qing said with a smile, and then his figure distorted and disappeared here. In just an instant, Yang Qing's figure appeared in front of Seiya and others. When he appeared at the place where several people were, Yang Qing's face showed a hint of surprise. In the middle of a dense forest, 2 young people are quickly shooting and fighting. Ling Yi, he is making great progress. Walking behind Seiya, Yang Qing said softly. Yeah, great elder, Ling Yi's cultivation during this period of time is just as desperate, and now he is not much weaker than the average Saiyan. Sai also nodded and said, and then reacted happily. Elder, you are back. Ha ha. Yeah, keep watching. Yang Qing nodded. In the field, there were not many loud noises coming out of the battle between Ling Yi and Dadara, but the speed and strength of the two were extremely condensed. Especially Ling Yi's boxing technique, his mysterious ability to control gravity, gave Dadara a headache. 4 ounces of 1,000 jins. Looking at the field, Ling Yi drew Dadala's figure and strength away again and again, removed it, and transmitted it to the ground or the big tree next to it. Young Qing's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile. This kid has a really good brain. Yeah, he understands fighting better than many Saiyans. With his strength at this time, it is incredible that he can even tie with Daedala, who has exerted his 3-point power. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Kurayat also praised. Haha. Yang Qing smiled and pondered for a moment. Perhaps, this kid's breakthrough point can be based on his ability. The bloodline of the people on Earth is innate, there is no way to make up for it, but their potential is infinite, and their weakness means that their potential is strong enough. The weaker the race, if one day it shines, it will be much stronger than other races. Gravity, flesh, strength. Yang Qing murmured, his eyes flashed a ray of light and a smile appeared. This kid is destined to become a Super Earthman. In the end, will it be better than Super Saiyan? I am really looking forward to it. On the field, Daedara was thrown out by the 53rd time and hit a big tree. In the end, it was a teenager. Anger appeared on Daedara's face, and his breath was rising. Ling Yi noticed this and his face became serious. The right hand trembled, and the mysterious power suddenly became more intense. Chapter 624 I Can't Stand You. With all his strength, Daedara could not be his opponent, he clearly knew this. Just when the two were about to start a more intense collision, Yang Qing on the side spoke lightly. Okay, let's go here. When his voice came, Ling Yi and Daedara were immediately stunned, and then they reacted. A smile appeared on the face of Daedara, who was already angry, and he lowered his breath and walked towards Yang Qing. Master, you are back, hee. Yeah. Nodding, Yang Qing's voice seemed a little dull. How are you preparing for the next battle? Yang Qing asked the crowd again after turning around. At this time, Ling Yi had also walked over, looking at Yang Qing with a hint of admiration that had never been seen before. Kurayat's eyes flashed, and the rest of the people nodded. Everything is ready and we can attack at any time. Other clansmen, we have already informed, as long as we give an order, we can start the counterattack immediately. Don't worry, Master, this time there will be 2 Super Saiyans, Kurayat and Saya. There will be no problem. Yang Qing's eyes flashed, and then said, this time, control the scope of the battlefield and try not to affect the entire planet. Kurayat and the others looked at each other, then smiled and said, their base is on the other side of the planet, and we will control the battlefield there. Yeah, Yang Qing nodded. Then, he returned home with several apprentices, after resting for 2 days. Kurayat came to his house, and the young man's eyes were full of fighting intent and excitement at the moment. Master, we are ready to launch a general attack. Kurayat's voice was trembling and shaking, full of excitement. Go, Yang Qing nodded with a calm expression. The battle started at this moment, and after Kurayat bowed to Yang Qing, he turned and stepped back. The moment he left Yang Qing's room, his face became stern and cold, and a cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. A group of weak ants dare to make a fortune on the head of the giant. I really don't know how to write the word, dead. Who is the ant and who is the giant long? It's very obvious. He flew up, and 3 minutes later came to a huge training ground. At this moment, there are a large number of Saiyans standing here, all with angry and excited expressions on their faces. The counterattack has finally begun, and the blood of these Saiyans has already begun to boil. Kurayat and the other 5, along with Saiyan and Ling Yi, are standing at the forefront of all Saiyans. Not much to say, this battle will come sooner or later, and you all know it. This time, our goal is not to destroy the planet, so I hope you can exercise some restraint. Try not to spill over into our homes. The rest. Kurayat paused, his eyes shining coldly. I hope you will not show any mercy. Kill. A scum who doesn't stay, trying to steal our family's genes, is unforgivable. Must be destroyed. With the last 4 words, Kurayat suddenly roared angrily, and the sound shook, filling the entire training ground, making all Saiyans shocked. The next moment, their eyes flashed with excitement. Kill! Someone shouted out this murderous voice, and suddenly, the Saiyans boiled, and waves of noises broke out. 3 seconds later, Goliath led all the Saiyans, led by Saya and other 7 people, followed by about 3,000 Saiyans behind him, with a terrifying aura all over his body, heading towards the other back of Nova. In the past, large areas of this planet were occupied by powerful monsters. At this moment, their backs are another race. At this time, what they have to do is to destroy that race and take back what originally belonged to them. One after another powerful breath swept through the sky in an instant, advancing at an incredible speed. Lin Yi was in these Saiyan worlds, and his eyes were also excited. He was infected, and his heart was beating thumping, and he was extraordinarily strong. The other side of Nova, when all the Saiyans are almost out. Logan, the Saiyans are all out and coming towards us. The spaceman came over anxiously and said to Logan. Logan, who was sitting on the chair in the deepest part of the palace, slowly opened his eyes. These wild monkeys are as restless as monkeys. With a mocking smile on the corner of his mouth, Logan said coldly. If that's the case, then dispatch all the artificial humans and destroy them completely for me. I know. I have informed all the android warriors that they are preparing. We have 5,000 android warriors, and their ordinary clansmen are not enough. The main thing now is the few powers at their peak. Are you sure, Logan? The spaceman said worriedly. Don't worry, the last time the 5 of them joined forces, I only suffered a little loss. This time, the Forge of Perpetual Motion is 100 times stronger than before. Although I haven't fully grasped this power, it is easy to destroy them. Logan. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. Said confidently. He believes that this is a huge power gap, and even if there are more Saiyans, it is impossible to really beat him. In addition, I have launched the killers hidden in the Saiyan tribe. Those Saiyans have given birth to a lot of new life in the past few years, and they cannot be allowed to continue to multiply. The spaceman said coldly. Every Saiyan, in their eyes, is a powerful enemy in the future, and must be cut down. Don't worry, they won't be jumping for a few days. Logan said coldly. Immediately after, Logan stood up abruptly and walked outside. Looking at Logan's back, the universe man's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. Great, this battle will definitely detect the specific data of the perpetual melting furnace. As long as we have these data, it is possible to transform him again. At that time, Lord Shiro's will appear in the most powerful posture. Quote. Defeat that guy named Frieza and win the title of Emperor of the Universe, it's time for a Seth to rise. The more the cosmos thought, the more excited it became. At the same time, Yang Qing, who was sitting in the room, suddenly flashed his eyes, and there was a cold murderous intent in his eyes. It's really a nation looking for death. I can't stand you anymore. Chapter 625 5003. It should be quiet in the Saiyan block that had already set off and headed towards the other hemisphere. Only women and children were left behind, but at this moment, a large number of androids suddenly came out from nowhere. They were smiling coldly, shouting, and killing intent all over their bodies. These androids are not very powerful, but they are numerous. Densely gathered together, it looks very shocking. The women and children who were left behind immediately changed their expressions when they saw the artificial man rising into the sky. Saiyans are worthy of being a warrior nation, and every one of them is a warrior. At this moment, even the 5 or 6-year-old children, their eyes flashed with cold light, gathered the momentum of the whole body, and prepared to rush into the sky to fight these androids. Ha ha ha, Saiyans, today is your time to perish. The artificial people laughed loudly. They had an advantage in numbers, and there was a big enough possibility to completely wipe out the Saiyans this time. All the Saiyans who stayed behind were all ready to fight at this moment. Children, take up arms and let them know that we Saiyans were never weak. In the face of adversity, we will not back down. What we Saiyans do is always one thing. That's fighting. At this moment, countless Saiyans shouted up to the sky and told their children that there was a little more war and fearlessness in their children's eyes that were nervous and scared. Kill all these Saiyans. The artificial people began to descend from the sky with excited expressions on their faces. Fight, my countrymen. Among the Saiyans, a loud roar came out, and several streamers first rushed into the sky, followed by one after another, large or small, soaring into the sky. But at the moment when the two sides were about to touch, in the middle of the sky and the ground, the air suddenly twisted, and the next moment, a figure appeared there. This figure is not very stalwart, and it does not look very powerful, but the moment he appeared in the field, he suddenly became calm. The artificial people stopped the trend of falling, and the Saiyans also stagnated and stopped in the air. Immediately afterwards, the Saiyans shouted excitedly after seeing the figure clearly. The Great Elder! It is the Great Elder! The Saiyans present all recognize the identity of the person who came, their eyes flashed with light, and they shouted happily. The figure that came was undoubtedly Yang Qing. His face was cold at the moment, and his pupils were flashing with a cold divine light. He looked up at the large artificial human's eyes, full of killing intent. You all have to die. This group of artificial humans with obvious Saiyan breath in their bodies is simply an insult, humiliation, and defilement to Saiyans. This has touched the bottom line of the entire Saiyan nation, and it has also touched Yang Qing's bottom line. In any case, he will not forgive such a group of bastards who try to steal Saiyan genes. The artificial people were stunned when they saw Yang Qing, who suddenly appeared, but the combat effectiveness tester on the corner of their eyes began to sound rapidly. Drip drip. This guy who suddenly appeared, the combat power is 5003. Only 5000. Haha, he's really a dead man, come on, kill him. You are so weak, and you dare to rush out and pretend to be a wolf with big tails. It's just courting death. After the artificial people thought they had found out Yang Qing's truth, they were relieved, and then they rushed towards Yang Qing in large numbers. The dazzling rays of light began to flicker one by one, and a qigong wave with huge energy appeared in the hands of each artificial person. Seeing this scene, the Saiyan children floating in the air below felt the violent energy fluctuations in the wind, and fear appeared in their hearts. Mom, I'm a little nervous. Are we going to die? Countless children asked, their eyes full of worry. Don't worry, child, the Elder is there. As long as the Great Elder is there, we are the safest. In contrast, the other slightly older Saiyans who stayed behind looked confident and relaxed. They believed that under the powerful power of the Great Elder, all enemies would be beaten into scum. After the children heard it, their nervousness eased a little, and they peeked at the sky. The figure of the rung on the heads of all Saiyans, at this moment, seems to have become a big tree that can shelter the entire Saiyan nation from wind and rain. As long as he stands there, no strong enemy will break through. There won't be any rain dripping and wetting their clothes. Ha ha ha, die, Saiyan. A group of wild monkeys are not qualified to survive in the universe. The artificial people laughed loudly, and the qigong wave in their hands suddenly threw out. Hush shish. At this moment, countless breaths rushed to the ground, piercing the air, and the airflow began to surge wildly. But at the same time, Yang Qing's eyes became even colder, his hands were placed on his waist, and he slowly pushed out, aiming at all the androids in the sky. Turtle tilde tilde pi tilde tilde chi tilde tilde gong tilde tilde wave tilde. His voice was very rhythmic, but it was also very fast. A brilliant light blue qigong wave appeared quickly in the hands around his waist. There was no breeze around him, and there was no surging air flow around him, and he seemed silent. But just. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. It is such a qigong wave, but the artificial humans in the sky are all sinking at this moment, as if they are being stared at by a wild beast. Invisible pressure enveloped their whole bodies, so that their foreheads appear involuntarily. Sweat. Drip drip. At this moment, the combat effectiveness tester on the artificial people's eyes began to flash and chirp rapidly. In less than a second, the sound of crackling, burst into pieces, and countless combat effectiveness testers shattered into pieces. Him. At that moment, the combat power increased crazily and exceeded the limit measured by the tester. Who the hell is this guy? Buzz. Suddenly, the sky seemed to be shaken, and all the androids were extremely frightened. They looked at the bright light blue long rainbow from the bottom up, but it rushed out of the man's hands in the blink of an eye. Then, in an instant, it swept all the androids floating in the air. In the blink of an eye, what was originally standing in the air was vaporized into nothingness by the high temperature carried by the Qigong wave. The splendid Changhong streaks across the sky, disappears in the blink of an eye, and rushes into the universe, never to be seen again. Chapter 626 Marriage Problems. In the sky, the densely packed humanoids disappeared. The blue sky and the warm sunshine seemed to be the same as before. There is only a chance that the blue smoke will slowly drift away, showing just how uneasy it was. No, it's gone. All disappeared. What's going on? Did the elder do it? Looking at Yangqing, who is still standing in the sky at the moment, keeping his hands facing the sky, many Saiyan children said incredulously in their eyes. Most of them were born in recent years. After Saiyans came to Xinxing, men and women who liked each other would naturally form a family, and then a new life would appear. These children have never experienced the period when Yangqing shines and shows his invincible strength, and they have never seen Yangqing's strength. On weekdays, they just listen to their parents or elders and talk about a powerful legend among the Saiyans. That is an invincible existence. No one in the universe is the opponent of that person. He is the patron saint of the Saiyan family, known as the Super Saiyan God. Ordinary Saiyans are them, and further up, is the legendary Super Saiyan, and at the apex of the Super Saiyan is that person, the Super Saiyan God. At this moment, the Saiyan children finally saw the power of their family of gods. It was a kind of trembling power that seemed to be light, but powerful, and no one would be his opponent. Too powerful. In a blink of an eye, their previous fear and tension disappeared, and they turned into worship and awe for this great elder. Whoa! At this time, the androids who were still hidden in the building before saw the terrifying scene, and finally couldn't help but start rushing to the sky and fleeing. That man is terrible. Run away. Run away. My God, why are there such powerful people among the Saiyans? In just an instant, 4,000 or 5,000 artificial humans were all wiped out. That person is too scary. A few streamers bloomed in the sky, and flew away in all directions at a rapid speed. Standing in the void and waiting for Yangqing, he did not let these people go. He stretched out one hand, aiming at the fleeing backs, and trembled violently. Shish! One after another dazzling Qigong waves slammed out of his palm, but in an instant, they hit the android flying ahead at an extremely fast speed, and then a violent explosion occurred. The sound of an explosion of 30 or 40 times in a row came from the sky, and a large flame spread out and fell from a high altitude. When it was about to fall on the ground, it slowly extinguished, turning into blue smoke and dissipating. Closing his eyes and feeling that there is no more disgusting anthropomorphic breath in the Saiyan territory, Yangqing slowly opened his eyes and retracted his right hand. Then, with a smile on his face, he turned his gaze downward. After more than 10 breaths, Yangqing stood in front of all the Saiyans. Don't worry, all the androids have been eliminated by me, there will be no problem with me here. The remaining Saiyans at this time were all weaker women or children. After leaving Star Vegeta, Nova took child protection measures. Saiyans are protected from birth until they are 14 years old. During the process of cultivation, they are not allowed to enter the battlefield. This method, without the ruthlessness and cruelty of the past, has a little more teaching, which is more beneficial to the development of the Saiyan nation. It was proposed by Yangqing that no one would object, and it was naturally implemented in this way. Elder, with you here, we must be relieved, hee. Elder, you are so amazing. I admire you so much. Do you have a girlfriend? If not, can I do it? If I can't, I still have many sisters. Yes, yes, Elder, you look so young, but sooner or later we Saiyans have to get married. Here are all the women of our Saiyan race. You can do whatever you like. The danger passed. Yang Qing was among these Saiyans, and after a few words, he was actually embarrassed. Most of them are young girls or women who have married. The Saiyan family advocates strength, and Yang Qing is the most powerful and handsome. On weekdays, many women winked at him. This time, when he appeared in front of others, it naturally made these women active. A powerful and handsome elder, which girl doesn't want to achieve good things? I don't think about it yet. After a long while, Yang Qing said it. How can we not think about it? We Saiyans get married at the age of 16. We have children at the age of 17. Our family is already small, so we have to give birth more, and give birth fiercely. Especially if you are as powerful as the first elder, you must have more children. First elder, don't ignore this. Your marriage problem is the biggest problem for our Saiyan family. That's right. You can marry anyone you like, elder. We won't mind as many as you want, right, sisters? Yes, I want to marry the great elder. Female Saiyans, every word you say to me, the old man Yang Qing blushed a little. Listening to what these people meant, it turned out to be encouraging him to open a harem, which really made him laugh or cry. After more than an hour, Yang Qing squeezed out of these female Saiyans helplessly. It's so warm, I can't stand it. Shaking his head, Yang Qing wiped the saliva from his face. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. He was very helpless, hiding and hiding, but was attacked several times by these rushing guys, making his face wet. Hearing that he was leaving, the Saiyans were naturally reluctant, and immediately more than a dozen girls rushed to kiss him to the death, making him hard to guard against. When Yang Qing finally pushed all the female Saiyans back into the room, the warriors of the entire Saiyan clan were the other half who had already arrived at Nova. The densely packed Saiyans all had cold faces, and their faces were full of murderous intent. They stood high in the sky, looking down at the architectural style that was obviously different from the Saiyans, and the brutal blood was revived at this moment. Get ready. Kurayat couldn't bear it anymore, and they didn't need to endure it either. The Saiyan nation has always been simple and rude. Only fists are the biggest truth. Throw me an artificial moon. Today, completely destroy this place for me. The honor of the Saiyans cannot be desecrated. Chapter 627 Collective Transformation. Shish. With a loud roar from Kurayat, several streamers immediately emerged from the sky, and in the blink of an eye, they turned into round moons, hanging in the sky, exuding a strange light. At the moment when these rays of light appeared, the Saiyans standing in the air shrank their pupils and their hearts throbbed violently. Destroy everything here. I don't need any compassion, just destroy everything for me. Remember what I said. Roaring loudly, Kurayat's eyes suddenly turned blood red, and his body was full of brutal and bloody artistic conception. This sudden big change immediately made Ling Yi's face change, and he was a little overwhelmed. What's the matter? What happened to these Saiyans? He couldn't help but take a few steps back and muttered. All the Saiyans seemed to be enchanted at this moment, staring at the countless moons in the sky. Their whole bodies were shaking and shaking violently, their pupils were full of blood, their faces became hideous, and the tail behind them swinging vigorously. This is the unique transformation method of our Saiyan nation. It does not need to be transformed like Kurayat, but it can also increase our combat power tenfold. But the only thing to pay attention to is that the bloodline is not pure enough, and the willpower is not strong enough, and will lose consciousness and become a gorilla who only knows how to kill and kill. Dadala's eyes were red, his body was powerful, and he was swelling violently, but he was still able to stay awake at the moment. Actually, there is such an incredible thing. Ling Yi was shocked. At this moment, he finally understood why the Saiyans were called the Fighting Nation. Such a bloodline, such a violent aura, simply exists for the sake of fighting. At this moment, a fierce roar suddenly came out. Roar! Bang bang bang! Finally, a Saiyan has successfully transformed into a gorilla. His original short height no longer exists. Instead, his clothes are stretched out, and the inch by inch begins to grow up quickly, only less than 10 seconds. At the same time, a huge orangutan with a height of several hundred meters had appeared on the spot, with red eyes, roaring up to the sky, hammering the position of his shong mouth, making a sound like a muffled drum. Ho-a-ho-ho. Immediately following, as if a chain reaction, the Saiyans roared up to the sky, their bodies began to swell, and in a blink of an eye they became a violent giant orangutan with bloody red eyes, falling from the sky and falling heavily on the ground below. The buildings were directly smashed into pieces. Countless Seth people ran out of the room in panic, looking at the gorillas around them, full of panic and fear. My God, what is this? Gorilla, where did this gorilla come from? Run, run. Boom. The brutal gorilla awakened the most brutal and bloody character in the depths of the Saiyan blood. At this moment, the wanton destruction began. Compared with the giant orangutan, the Seth people on the ground were as small as fragile ants. They raised their feet or palms, and just slammed them down, they were blood and flesh. And the large buildings were destroyed by their irritability. At this moment, the territory of the Seth family was mercilessly destroyed by the Saiyans. In the sky, several gorillas have also successfully transformed, their eyes are blood red, looking down. It's just that, unlike the orangutans below, these gorillas' eyes are blood red, but it can be seen that they have obvious consciousness. Ling Yi, stand on my shoulders, the battle begins, be careful to be killed. Sai Ya's voice became much heavier and thicker, and the buzzing sound made Ling Yi's ears hurt. The dozen or so giant orangutans next to him also looked at Ling Yi, because it was not what he was, and Ling Yi didn't know who was who at the moment. Stay closely with us, the people below, some inferior warriors, are unconscious after transforming, and may accidentally kill you. Karayat's voice sounded, making Ling Yi feel a chill in his heart. If this is killed by one's own people, it would be so unfair. Let's go, it's time for us to act too, quickly destroy everything for them. Hem. The gorillas nodded, and then fell directly from the sky. The whistling wind was blowing wildly, and their falling speed was very fast, but in a short while, their feet had already stepped on the ground. Boom. A large area of the ground was sunken, a violent earthquake began to spread, and the buildings of the Seth tribe were destroyed in a mess. Large swaths of the tribe died, and the ground was covered in blood and stumps. Brutal Saiyans, showing their ruthless side at this moment. Hey! A crimson qigong wave was brewing in the mouth of the gorilla, and then he opened his mouth and launched it towards the distance. Boom! The ground shook again, flames shot up into the sky, and countless screams rang out. Thousands of gorillas jumped up quickly in all directions. Their huge bodies could span several miles in one step, smashing the ground with one foot, and the qigong wave was countless times stronger than the original combat power. At this moment, the destruction, almost no one can stop it. What is even more frightening is that in the middle of all the gorillas, there are still 6 most. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. For the bulky guy. These 6 gorillas, with clear and cold eyes, looked down at everything in all directions, and roared at the unconscious gorillas from time to time, clearly directing them. In a blink of an eye, the gorillas, who were brutal and unconscious, became a powerful and organized army. In a building of the Sai, the all-round attack of the Saiyans has not yet threatened here. The Saiyans are attacking. The spaceman said anxiously to Logan in the palace. I underestimated this group of wild monkeys. I really didn't expect that they would dare to attack first. Logan stood up suddenly, with no panic on his face. Come on, our clansmen will be killed soon. The Cosmos man said anxiously. HMPH, that group of weak ants will die when they die, and they can create more when they die. What a pity, Logan said coldly. That's what it says, but it's our clansmen after all. The universe said humanely. Let the android army hurry up, they are useless guys. I heard that the androids lurking in the Saiyans are dead. Logan first ordered, then turned his head and asked again. Chapter 628-Logan shot. Yes, according to the camera records installed on their detectors, an exceptionally powerful Saiyan appeared, and all the androids were wiped out with just one blow. The Universe Man said solemnly, that Saiyan's the combat power, even the combat power tester can't test it, the combat power is at least over 100,000. Really? Logan's eyes flashed, then turned his head and said, I went out to clean up the group of Saiyans first. It's ridiculous that a bunch of monkeys who don't know the sky and the earth also want to destroy us. Then, Logan strode out of here. Along with Logan, there were countless cyborgs with powerful combat power. The Saiyan attacked very suddenly and without the slightest precaution. In almost 3 minutes, 2/3 of the Seth's territory was completely destroyed. Only 1/3 of the core area remains, which has not yet been attacked by war. But it is this third of the territory that hides the most powerful power of the Seth tribe. Nearly 20,000 or 30,000 androids rushed out of the nest at this moment, rushing into the sky densely, and attacking the gorillas that the Saiyans turned into. The dazzling Qigong wave bloomed, rushed out from the hand of the android, and then collided with the bodies of the gorillas and exploded. Roar! The gorillas ate in pain and became more furious. They waved their hands angrily, and the huge force brought a gust of wind howling, and then slammed into the void ahead. Bang! In an instant, the huge force caused a dozen androids to burst into blood mist. Compared to the transformed Saiyan, the android's combat power is still not strong enough. It is not the opponent of the Saiyans at all. The dazzling red light is constantly blooming. On the territory of the Sai, there are flames everywhere. But the androids were outnumbered, and for a while, the two sides were evenly tied. It's just that with the passage of time, the gorillas transformed by Saiyans became more violent, and the androids were quickly eliminated. Like a tiger entering a flock, a huge orangutan is enough for dozens or even hundreds of humanoids. They are huge and fast, and their bodies contain violent energy fluctuations. The fragile androids are not the enemies of these guys at all. In the heart of the battlefield, more than a dozen huge orangutans stood there, constantly scanning around. The androids are not our opponents at all, they are being eliminated quickly. Karayat said in a deep voice. Is the guy named Logan here? Seiya asked. I haven't found the figure of that guy yet, but it will come out sooner or later. Referring to Logan, Karayat snorted. Last time, they were all 5 together to be able to become opponents with each other. But this time, he turned into a Super Saiyan and no longer feared that guy. Now, Karayat even wants to see the guy right away and fight him. Quickly destroying these androids is the greatest insult to us Saiyans. Dirty and failed work. Seiya strode forward, his right hand continuously sent shock waves, and large explosions began to sound, and pieces of artificial humans were destroyed. The Saiyans formed a huge circle at this time, with the unconscious gorillas on the periphery, and Saiyan and others on the innermost layer. With such a formation, they continued to spread out, quickly clearing the territory that occupied the Seth tribe. So far, the war is going very smoothly. The Saiyans who turned into gorillas are simply battlefield harvesters. They are unconscious, and their minds are full of violent destructive psychology. Everything in front of them will be quickly destroyed by them. In just 10 minutes, the Sai were about to be completely destroyed and wiped out under the violent attack of the Saiyans. At this moment, on the edge of the battlefield, a tall figure appeared here. His eyes were red, and his face was full of indifference and ruthlessness. After striding here, a trace of disdain and ridicule appeared on his face. It's really a bunch of ignorant wild monkeys. I'm sick of seeing it. Lord Logan, hurry up, the brothers can't stand it anymore, these wild monkeys are really powerful. Behind him, there is an artificial man anxiously said. The 20,000 or 30,000 androids had already been destroyed in half by the opponent at this time. And as time goes on and their numbers decrease, the speed of this eradication will only be faster. If Logan doesn't take action again, it is conceivable that the android won't last long. At this moment, standing on the edge of the battlefield, they could even clearly see that the huge orangutan flashed with a slap. A lump of meat. There was even a gorilla who seemed to be fanning a mosquito, and with that one fan, an artificial man was shot several kilometers away, hit a tall building, raised dust, and stopped moving. I have to admit that these hairy Saiyans are indeed muscular. In the universe, some races rely on their brains to eat, while others rely on their muscles to eat, and Saiyans are undoubtedly the latter. HMPH, I will naturally take action, what a bunch of useless waste. Logan snorted coldly, and walked towards the Saiyan's range. Watching Logan leave, the android who spoke before showed a trace of disdain at the corner of his mouth. And, isn't it your luck that you have been transplanted with the best furnace? The power is unlimited, or you can count. It's just a piece of junk whose combat skills haven't even surpassed the 5th floor. Although the Sai are a technology-based nation, they also have internal wars. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Fighting is divided into sections, and the fighting skills are divided into sections, and Logan has not passed the 5 stages of combat skills. Such people, in the Seth clan, are known as the low-level end with the least talent. Of course, Logan's luck was overwhelming, and he counterattacked. Even if the others were Duan, they couldn't compare to Logan's finger. This naturally made many Seth people jealous and hated this guy. Especially after gaining power, Logan's character swelled and became moody. He was no longer the silent and unknown guy he used to be. He was always high profile and cruel. People hate it. Not to mention these, when Logan strode into the Saiyan's range, several gorillas immediately discovered this tiny guy. Roar. The violent roar came out, bringing out the strong wind, and immediately swept away towards Logan. Chapter 629-Battle. The wind roared, and when the gorilla roared, the dynamic potential energy brought out, the majestic energy fluctuations immediately impacted, and the sound of the wind could even blow away an adult. However, at this moment, Logan had an icy look on his face, without a trace of fear, and without the slightest feeling of wanting to avoid the strong wind. He just stood there abruptly, withstood the wind. Wild monkeys are wild monkeys, getting bigger. It's also a wild monkey. Disdainful words spit out from Logan's mouth, and the angry gorilla slammed down as if he heard his voice. The wind grew louder, and the air pressure driven by the huge force moved towards Logan. In an instant, this punch fell on Logan's head. Suddenly, Logan's eyes sharpened, and he threw a punch towards the top. In front of me, you're just trash. Bang! The huge shock wave spread out, driving a large piece of dust, and after the first contact, the gorilla's pupils shrank, the whole body trembled, and his eyes showed a look of horror. The originally unconscious gorilla, at this moment, seemed to feel the existence that he was born invincible, and began to fear and panic. Buzz! Time seemed to pause with a punch, and then, the huge body of the gorilla rose from the ground, and the next moment, it flew away into the distance. With 2 punches to bang, the huge gorilla couldn't resist, and was directly knocked into the air by Logan. After hitting 13 buildings in a row, the gorilla vomited blood, and then his body began to shrink. Weak. Really weak. Logan watched this scene with a mocking smile on his face. Afterwards, he jumped up into the sky and attacked the gorillas everywhere. Bang! He punched the other gorilla in the stomach, and immediately, the latter was shocked, flung up, and fell heavily to the ground, returning to its original state. A foot fell from the sky and hit the gorilla's head fiercely. Suddenly, the gorilla's head slammed into the ground, knocking the ground into a deep pit. The gorilla trembled violently a few times. Returned to its original state. Logan moved forward from the edge of the battlefield, and no gorilla could stop him. Huh! There was a scarlet qigong wave coming towards him. Logan clenched his fist and threw a punch. With a bang, the scarlet qigong wave was directly distorted and dented, and then was knocked back and flew back. With a sound of boom, the flames of the explosion rose into the sky, and the orangutan was seriously injured and returned to its original state. There was no Saiyan who could stop Logan from taking a step. The former was like taking a leisurely walk in his own backyard in this dangerous battlefield. He strode forward, very fast, and many Saiyans attacked him, or waved their fists, or leapt over, thinking of him sitting down heavily, or opened their mouths and spat out a terrible shock wave. But they were easily evaded by him, followed by another counterattack, which eliminated the Saiyan who attacked him. At this moment, more than a dozen gorillas in the heart have already noticed his existence. "Logan!" Daedalus shouted, roaring, and jumping towards the black spot in the distance. "That's Logan." Saiya's eyes narrowed, his heart was boiling, and he ran quickly. At this moment, everyone took action. "Ling Yi, find your opponent yourself. We're going to fight, we don't care about you," Saiya said quickly while running. "Okay." Ling Yi didn't hesitate at all, and he jumped off Seiya's shoulder and floated in the air. For so long in Xinxing, he had already mastered the air dance technique, and even the use of qi, he also understood one by one. It can be said that compared to when he was on Earth, Ling Yi was much stronger at this time. The speed of Seiya and others was very fast, and it took almost only a short 10 seconds, and the huge orangutan had already surrounded Logan in his heart. "Logan!" Stoyart roared angrily, the momentum was amazing. "Oh, you 5 guys, are you also turning into gorillas this time?" Logan's eyes appeared playful, he glanced at the 5 people, and was stunned when he saw Seiya. "No, is it a person this time?" "I will kill you," Seiya said coldly. Then, he launched the attack without a word, jumped up suddenly, and the huge figure drove a large shadow, and a punch suddenly slammed down. Saiyan's punch is no better than other unconscious Saiyans. His power is not what it used to be. Even in his original state, his combat power is already amazing, not to mention the tenfold increase at this time. After the punch was swung, Logan's face changed immediately, his figure distorted and disappeared. Boom! The earth shook, and a large pit with a radius of 1 kilometer appeared directly here. At the same time, Karayat also roared, twisted his waist, kicked his back foot, and went straight to the top of Saiya's head. Seiya's eyes flashed and he immediately lowered his head. Bang! In the next second, Logan's figure appeared above Seiya's head, his right leg was raised high, he slashed down fiercely, and collided with Karayat's right foot, and a terrifying shock wave surged out. The remaining 4. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. People were all blown away by the huge airflow and took a few steps back. "You guys back off. This guy is extraordinary." Saiya's face changed, and he said coldly. In just a short contact, he discovered that the opponent's strength was indeed terrifying. And, vaguely, it seems to have exceeded the intensity previously described by Karayat and others. "Saiya, be careful, he's stronger than before," Karayat said solemnly. "Ha ha ha, yes, you too, Karayat, you are stronger than before, it seems that something happened. As for you, where did you come from? It seems that I haven't seen you. However, it doesn't matter." Logan laughed out loud, his figure floating in the air, and after laughing, his face suddenly turned gloomy. "Anyway, you're all going to die. Don't be ashamed." Seiya roared and attacked again, his fists quickly attacked and swung towards Sora Logan. But after more than 1,000 punches, Seiya's face became even more solemn. He didn't even hit the opponent with a single punch, and the opponent's speed was too fast. "You are too slow." Logan mocked lightly, and the figure disappeared suddenly. Chapter 630-Strongest State. "Be careful." Karayat roared and moved suddenly. Bang! The 2 fists collided on Seiya's back, and the air wave rolled, and Seiya's body was pushed forward 2 steps before it stopped. Karayat, ha ha. Logan looked at the person standing in front of him and smiled. Then, his figure flashed, and he attacked Seiya again. "Don't try to attack me." Seiya roared, a qigong wave appeared in his big hand, and the high-temperature energy surged violently. "It seems to be very strong, but for me, it is still far from enough." In the next instant, a qigong wave appeared in Logan's hand, and he greeted Saya. Bang! The explosion spread at the moment when the two hands collided, and the flame and high temperature appeared between the two, but did not cause any change in the expressions of the two. Kill. Karayat also attacked at this time. The huge arm waved, the wind whistled, driving the giant force, and pressed it towards Logan. The latter had a casual expression and raised his hand to meet him. Boom. With a quick collision again, Saya followed closely. Boom 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 boom. A series of banging sounds spread in an instant. The three people started fighting, the ground beside them kept exploding, the dust was raised, and they moved quickly. Under the rapid attacks of Saya and Karayat, Logan kept retreating, and his attack rhythm was completely suppressed by the two of them. But even so, Logan's expression still did not change in the slightest. He looked like a fish in water, and he was incredibly flexible. The attack of the two did not cause him any damage. A full 3 minutes later, the three of them collided with each other even more massively, and the ground in a radius of 5,000 meters was dusty before they quickly separated. You Saiyans, you idiots, you are killing yourself by relying only on your muscles. The bigger the body, the bigger the goal. Don't you understand such an easy-to-understand truth? Logan opened his mouth with a sneer, causing Saya's expressions to change slightly. Changed into a gorilla state, it seems to be much stronger than before, but it is corresponding. You're just getting better at hitting. Don't believe it. You'll find out soon. With a sneer, Logan radiated a dazzling crimson light, and his aura suddenly rose. The next second Saya stared at each other, Logan's figure suddenly disappeared. His speed was completely beyond the limit of what the two of them could observe at this moment. Their huge pupils were wide open, but no matter what, they couldn't see any trace of the enemy. Disappeared. No, he was too fast. The two searched quickly, but to no avail. I said, your goals are too big, and the flaws are everywhere. A gloomy laughter came from behind Karayat, and Karayat's expression changed immediately. He was about to turn around and attacked his back, and the sound came from behind him. Bang! However, just before he could turn around completely, a strong force had already slammed into his back, causing his whole body to roar and tremble. The sound of clicking seemed to be unable to support this monstrous force. Karayat! Saya roared, his body moved, and he attacked Logan. But just as his huge fist was swung out, the latter smirked and twisted away. It was only at this moment that Karayat's huge figure just got up from the ground, fell towards the front, and rolled all the way for nearly 10,000 meters. Buzz! The air trembled, and Karayat recovered from his gorilla state, panting and slowly changing into his original appearance. The huge gorilla disappeared, and Karayat stared at Logan floating in the sky with his hands clasped and his eyes full of ice. You're right, the Saiyans turned into gorillas, and the total amount of strength and chi has indeed increased a lot, but correspondingly, their huge bodies have also become flaws. If that's the case, then I will use my strongest state to completely exterminate you. After slowly saying these words, Karayat's breathing calmed down, and then he said to Saya, who had also returned to normal. Saya, next, don't shoot. This is my fight. Saya was startled, then nodded seriously. Interesting, after you have transformed through special means, you are not my opponents. Are you now delusional to fight against me alone? Logan's eyes showed a disdainful smile. He didn't care, and continued to quietly look down at Karayat below. Then I'll see what kind of surprise you can bring me. After Karayat said those words, he closed his eyes and ignored Sky Logan's words. Gradually, the 2 breaths' time passed, and an inexplicable aura suddenly rose towards Karayat's body. His expression became cold and cruel, and at the same time there was an anger that could be clearly perceived by others. It is a monstrous anger that can make the enemy fear. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Breath of anger. Ah! Suddenly, Karayat opened his eyes, and he let out a loud roar. Buzz! The air trembled, and golden lightning suddenly flashed away, surrounding Karayat's body, and an invisible cyclone spread out in all directions with him as its heart. The surging breath that made the ground tremble and the void trembled was transmitted from Karayat at this moment, and everyone on the side was shaking violently. Poof! A slight sound came out, and Karayat's hair and eyebrows turned golden, and his pupils turned coldly green. At this moment, his face was full of coldness and cruelty, accompanied by unspeakable rage. Logan, this is my strongest state. We Saiyans have a legend that he is the strongest symbol that comes out every 1,000 years. Named Super Saiyan. The me now is when I am the strongest. The incomparably cold words spit out from Karayat's ears and spread through the air. With his pupils shrunk, Logan looked down at Karayat below, and his heart felt a little dignified. The overwhelming aura, even from a distance, he could clearly perceive it. You mean, you have now become a legend of your family? Is that a Super Saiyan? Chapter 631 _ to lose. That's right, Logan, I am now the strongest transformation of our clan, Super Saiyan. Suffer to death. Karayat shouted, his eyes bursting with endless killing intent, his knees slightly bent, and he flicked toward the ground, and the next moment, the whole person rose to the sky. It turned into a stream of light, with lightning all over his body, swept through the void, and approached Logan in the sky at a terrifying speed. At this moment, the speed of Karayat's explosion was 10 times faster than before, and his voice was fierce and terrifying. In less than 2 seconds, Karayat's figure was already in front of Logan. Bang! Logan's eyes shrank, and he threw his fist down fiercely, and Karayat raised his fist to greet him. Huge shock waves spread out in the sky, halos spread out one by one, and bursts of thunderous sounds continued to sound. Boom boom boom. The two started a terrifying battle in the sky. Their speed and strength reached the limit of the human body, as if two behemoths were colliding. Punch, block, kick, intercept, quick transfer. Their figures kept disappearing, appearing, and quickly confronting each other. When their fists were swung out, a gust of wind erupted, driving thunder and lightning. Crackling. Gradually, Karayat's eyes changed slightly, and he noticed that the opponent's strength was comparable to that of himself after he turned into a Super Saiyan. Strengthened again. The pupil constricted. This was an expected result, but I didn't expect it to come true. Haha, how's it going, Saiyan? Logan laughed while throwing his fist. If it weren't for the upgrade of my power furnace, this time it might not be your opponent. Transformed into a Super Saiyan, you are at least 50 times stronger than the last time. I am really surprised. Death. Karayat became angrier, and the power on his fist became heavier. Boom boom boom. The collision between the two made the sky tremble. Below, Seiya looked up at the battle between the two, and his eyes kept turning. This Logan is really strong. With a heavy heart, Seiya dignified. Just based on the battle with Karayat, he was able to find out. From Karayat's transformation into a Super Saiyan until now, the opponent has still performed well. But, Saiyan, you underestimated me. This is doomed to your failure. Logan's eyes suddenly turned cold, and Senleng's killing intent came out from his body, covering Karayat's body, causing the latter's complexion to change. Do you think I only have so much power? You are wrong. After the two sentences were finished, Logan suddenly raised his head to the sky and roared, and the violent airflow spread out from his body. The majestic energy fluctuations burst out in an instant, and the perpetual motion furnace of his body was boiling continuously, blooming red. Colored light. At this moment, Logan's power swelled up, as if it were inexhaustible. Karayat's sturdy body immediately collapsed 500 meters by the violent air current. The latter looked at Logan in shock, his eyes full of disbelief. More powerful than the last time. How is this possible? How is that possible? Logan laughed when he heard Karayat's words. Thanks to you Saiyans. If it wasn't for your genome, which gave us a revelation to the Seth group, how could those scientists have researched this perpetual melting pot and thus made me cheaper? The figure suddenly distorted, and Logan disappeared in front of Karayat. "You are too weak for me now." He threw his fist and slammed into Karayat's stomach. But the next moment, something that surprised Logan happened. In front of him, Karayat, who seemed extremely fragile to him, roared suddenly, and the breath on his body swelled again, reaching the level of his realm. Fun. Bang. The fists of the two completed a collision again. At this time, Karayat's face was solemn and serious, while Logan had a hint of playfulness. Below, Seiya looked at the two people in the sky, his eyes full of bad. Exploding gas. "Did you use a trick so quickly?" In this way, Karayat is definitely not a match for that Logan. He clearly saw the situation of the field. Logan was an artificial man with a perpetual motion melting pot in his body, and they were also very clear about what this permanent motion melting pot was. Compared with the Saiyans with limited physical strength, the androids with furnaces are simply unlimited power. Their stamina is amazing, and the power output by each punch is extremely average, which is simply the data of the battle. Facing such an opponent, the best way is to overwhelm the opponent with strength, otherwise, it will be extremely difficult. While Seiya was thinking, two dazzling rays of light bloomed in the sky. Turtle School Qigong Wave. A loud roar came out of Kalayat's mouth, a dazzling pale blue light shone, and then a long rainbow rushed out of Kalayat's hand and rushed towards Logan, who was on the opposite side. "Saiyan, you surprised me. This blow actually boosts your power again." "Yahahaha." Logan's expression changed when he saw Turtle School Qigong. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. It was a slight change. At the same time, a dazzling light radiated from his hands, and a huge Qigong wave was formed in an instant. The next second, he violently pushed out the Qigong wave of his hand. "However, if you are angry with me, you will lose." The boiling crimson light continued to flicker, and the power furnace in Logan's body was running extremely violently at this moment. Ah! As if going crazy, Kalayat transmitted all of his breath to the Qigong wave he started, and pushed it forward. The two began to stand high in the sky and began a showdown between energies. The wind whistled, and dense lightning surrounded the two of them, making a crackling sound. One side is crimson, and the other is golden, forming two opposing camps. Karayat's last move. He's going to lose. Seeing Karayat, who was almost desperate in the sky, Seiya's face became even heavier. Turtle-style Qigong was taught to these 5 people after he came to Xinsheng. Compared with the rough method of using Qigong waves that he had mastered before, the turtle-style Qigong waves were obviously more energy-saving and had the effect of increasing their power. Transforming into a Super Saiyan, and then boosting his burst gas again, Karayat's original combat power has been increased by 150 times. Coupled with the turtle Qigong wave, at this moment, Karayat, without a doubt, used his full strength. Chapter 632-3 punches. And at this time, Kalayat still unreservedly released it with all his strength. He didn't take into account the remaining energy and physical strength of his own, and he leaned out crazily, with a desperate posture. "I have to be ready, or he will be killed." Seiya's pupils were sharp, staring at Logan in the sky. There was an invisible wind, and Seiya's hair changed between black and gold, and it seemed that he could transform into a Super Saiyan at any time. At this point, Seiya was amazing when he transformed into Karayat, no doubt much stronger. Although he didn't reach Yangqing's full power transformation, he was close to it. In addition, at the time of cultivation, Seiya's combat power has already surpassed the level of 200,000. In the last time with Karayat, Seiya was far from using his full strength. After the explosion, I was able to crush his power at this time. Eyes flashed, Seiya stared at Logan in the sky fiercely. The explosive gas increased 3 times, that is, 150 times. At that time, Seiya's combat power had reached a terrifying 30 million. Such combat power will be the most terrifying nightmare for Logan, whose total combat power is finalized. Shish. At this time, a sharp whistle sounded in the sky, and the Qigong wave showdown between the two seemed to have reached the final moment. Ah! Kurayat let out a frantic roar and outputted it forward, but the sweat on his forehead kept flowing out and dripping onto the ground. My total energy level is far inferior to his. I lost. At this moment, Kurayat's heart was shocked, and when he realized this result, he couldn't help but feel a huge shock. Ha ha ha, Dai Saiyan, you're done. Logan laughed, and the Qigong wave in his hand swelled again, attacking Kurayat quickly. It's over. Seeing that the energy of his hand was quickly occupied, and then came towards him, Kurayat was shocked. On the ground, Seiya's pupils narrowed suddenly. I have to do it. Just a slight, poof, Saiyan's hair and eyebrows turned golden, and it has become a Super Saiyan mode. Following Yang Qing's fall in love with the bookstore, there are many ways to become stronger. For example, when you are in Super Saiyan 1, you should try to maintain this state as much as possible, which can speed up your familiarity with Super Saiyans, and can also enhance your physical strength and strength in disguise. His speed was much faster than that of Kurayat, and he had reached the rear of Kurayat almost in an instant. With a sudden pull, Kurayat was already dragged behind him. Then, Seiya shrank his eyes and pushed forward fiercely with one hand. Buzz! The violent Qigong waves, fluctuations and distortions spread, and Kurayat's face changed and he shouted loudly. Saiya, don't! Get out of the way, you are not his opponent. He has personally fought with Saiya, and naturally he knows how much Saiya's fighting power is. And in his consciousness, Seiya, who is not Yang Qing's apprentice, may not even have mastered the means of exploding gas. Such Seiya is really not Logan's opponent. Logan was taken aback when he saw that there was a sudden change of person, and then he laughed again. Are you going to stage a scene where your companions save you? Do Saiyans have times when they are so affectionate? It's really touching. The Qigong wave in his hand continued to advance at an extremely fast speed. At this moment, it had reached 3 meters in front of Saiya, and it only took at most 2 seconds to devour the two people on that end. This battle is a winner. Rescue. Saiya laughed. No, I killed you. Scum. The tone changed suddenly, and Seiya's expression became extremely cold. He shouted loudly, and the momentum on his body rose instantly. This burst of airflow was so violent that there was an uncontrollable feeling, and this majestic aura made Kara standing behind Seiya. At's face changed greatly. Saiya, you. At this moment, Seiya's terrifying aura completely stunned him. Exploding. The cold words were spit out from Seiya's mouth, and the breath suddenly swelled 3 times again. The Qigong wave on his one hand suddenly lifted towards the sky, and in a short while, a long rainbow twisted and went towards the depths of the universe in the sky. 2 seconds later, a beautiful fireworks burst out. Logan's whole body trembled, looking at Seiya who easily lifted his maximum power Qigong wave, his pupils kept dilating and shrinking. After 3 seconds, he laughed. It really surprised me, Saiyan, that there is still a person as powerful as you. Seiya's eyes were cold, and the killing intent was soaring. I'm not here to listen to your nonsense, I'm here to kill you. Buzz. Suddenly, the void where Saiya stood was distorted, and his figure disappeared. Logan's pupils shrank, and he felt a needle stick in the neck behind his back, and his heart immediately accelerated. So fast. Die. Seiya's roar came out at this moment, and his elbow hit his neck hard. Click. As if the sound of a broken cervical vertebra sounded, Logan plunged his head down from the sky and slammed into the ground. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The smoke and dust were everywhere, the explosion sounded, and a 10,000-meter-long ditch and gully formed in an instant. However, after Seiya's blow, it was not over yet. His figure distorted again and disappeared in place. On the ground, Logan's head was bent, and he stood up with difficulty. He was about to twist his cervical spine back to its original shape, but at this time, a figure had already appeared in front of him. 3 punches. I'm going to blow you up. Seiya's icy words were extremely cold, and at the same time, he took a step forward. Punch, punch hard. Bang. Logan's body was bent, blood swill spurted out of his mouth, and the whole person was brought above Seiya's fist and suspended on the ground. Slowly withdrawing his fists, Logan knelt on his knees, his forehead pressed against the ground, his face full of pain. 2 punches, just 2 punches, just like dispersing the spirit and energy of his whole body, making him extremely weak. Da da da. The sound of footsteps rang in Logan's ears, and the latter raised his head with difficulty, and what he saw was Seiya's incomparably cold face. You. He finally spit out vague words, as if in fear, as if in shock. If I'm not mistaken, your strength comes from that red glow in your body, right? Seiya lifted it up and said coldly. Logan was shocked, and then he seemed to have a premonition and shook his head in horror. No, don't. Chapter 633 We gotta get stronger. Don't. Seiya's eyes showed a mocking look, and he raised the ladder high without any hesitation. Die, you. Then, with a violent force, he threw Logan towards the sky. Huh. A stream of light then lit up, and Logan was thrown out without resistance. Boom. The dazzling light blue light shone, and Seiya stretched out one hand, and a brilliant Shenghong Qigong wave was emitted. After 2 seconds, a bang sounded through Logan's body. Boom. A huge explosion sounded high in the sky, large flames flew out, and mushroom clouds bloomed. The powerful Logan was easily blown up by Seiya. Poof. Seiya returned to his normal appearance. His face was a little pale, but he recovered quickly. At this time, Kurayat's eyes were full of shock when he looked at Seiya. Okay, so powerful. Is this his real power? It turns out that he hadn't used his full strength in the previous battle. In an instant, Kurayat's face became complicated. Next, Logan was eliminated, the battlefield was very fast, and the high-quality harvest of the Saiyans was shocking. Everything in the Seth clan was easily wiped out, leaving no trace. However, they didn't notice that at the moment of Logan's disappearance, a small spaceship quietly flew up, flashed a ray of light, and quickly headed out of space. This spaceship is not large, with an area of 30 to 40 square meters. At this moment, in the space of this spaceship, more than a dozen scientists of the Seth tribe are communicating rapidly. How's Logan's data collection going? After all the collections are completed, there is still a problem with the perpetual motion furnace, but no problem, this time it will be overcome. In addition, we have already collected the energy data of the 2 Saiyans, as well as the battle data. Especially the guy after that, whose data we have collected is the most detailed and is still being analyzed. The perpetual motion furnace is still unstable. It cannot be manifested, and it can be easily destroyed. In addition, the energy it can hold in it is still not enough, and it has too many limitations. Can you find a way, like the 2 Saiyans, without showing the slightest on weekdays, accumulating energy, and bursting out when fighting? You mean, will the perpetual motion furnace be graded? Yes, grading can save losses and improve the stability of the furnace. What's more beneficial is that we can make the size of the perpetual furnace smaller and fuse it with the body of the Seth family. In battle, it will not be easily destroyed. Quote. This method is feasible, go back and test in this direction. I have a hunch that this time, Lord Shiro's of our Seth clan will definitely become the strongest in the universe. That's right, with the perpetual melting pot, plus the data of the Saiyans, Lord Shiro's will definitely be the most powerful. Come back and destroy this group of monkeys. The universe belongs to our Seth family. With excitement, the scientists quickly left Nova and headed for the planet of the Seth tribe. Seiya and others didn't know that although they occupied Nova again, a bigger disaster was about to come. The Saiyans who have obtained the complete data of the perpetual motion furnace must be able to become powerful again. Besides, who is that mysterious Lord Shiro's? All of this is a mystery, and it will affect the entire Saiyan in the near future. After winning this battle, the Saiyans packed up the battlefield and carried their wounded companions to go home. At this time, they had expressions of pride and joy on their faces. The powerful Saiyans once again proved themselves in battle, proving that they are the most powerful race. On the way, Goliath looked at Seiya with a complicated expression, and the other four who were standing with him were staring at Seiya with a very strange expression. "What's wrong, you?" Seiya asked suspiciously. Ling Yi looked at both sides curiously. He also had many scars on his body, which were all injuries he suffered during the battle with the androids. Compared with the Saiyans, although the artificial people are not as good, for Ling Yi, they are formidable opponents. For Ling Yi, it is a huge challenge for everyone to create a human. "You, how many things did you get with the bookstore?" "Yes, you are much stronger than before." The five people's hearts are very complicated, especially Dadara, who has personally played against the latter. That time, Seiya wasn't even his opponent. But after a while, Seiya has become so powerful at this moment. Don't say it's him, it's the other people who are not Seiya's opponents. Life's ups and downs, nothing more than this. To be surpassed by someone who was inferior to me before, this feeling is really uncomfortable. The elders taught me how to become stronger, bursting chi, turtle qigong, understanding of martial arts, and feelings about the surrounding environment, etc. But it's... Seiya paused for a while, and his right hand touched the long sword behind him. The most powerful thing the elders taught me was swordsmanship. Speaking of this, Seiya's eyes flashed a sharp light. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Indeed, his greatest strength is swordsmanship. Swordsmanship. Several people then looked at the long sword behind Seiya. In fact, after Seiya returned for so long, they had never seen the latter use this sword. "With this sword, my strength can be increased again and become stronger." Seiya's indifferent words shocked several people. As a result, their hearts also swayed in circles. Is this the result of following the great elder's cultivation? Stoyard and the others looked at each other, and they all understood what each other's eyes looked like, and they nodded to each other. "This time, when I go back, I will pester the elders and let them train us." Soon, all the Saiyans will return. Because he transformed into a gorilla's combat power booster, he didn't suffer much damage in the face of artificial people. Only a few Saiyans were seriously injured, and they were all able to recover after being placed in the recuperation tank. Therefore, this time the battle can be said to be a complete victory. Saiyans, immersed in the joy of victory, celebrated each other. "Master, we have to become stronger." At the same time, the five Stoyards also squeezed in front of Yangqing. Their faces were serious, and their eyes were full of seriousness and perseverance. Chapter 634 Master-Apprentice Battle. Looking at the eyes of the five people in front of him, Yangqing didn't know that these guys were stimulated, so he couldn't help laughing. "Want to become stronger?" "Yes." When the five heard Yangqing's words, they immediately became excited. "Master, Seiya has been with you for so many years. His power has improved too fast. We have been practicing alone for so long. You must teach us for a while." Duodoli complained a little, her tone full of envy that Seiya was able to follow Yangqing's side. "Hee, I came back this time to let your strength keep up." Yangqing nodded and said with a smile. He carefully glanced at the five people, and observed them one by one, from the surface to the inside of the breath. "It's not bad, you guys have a solid foundation, and it will be much easier to do next." After a few glances, Yangqing was also very satisfied with the five. These five guys are all talented people in the Saiyan tribe, with kindness in their hearts. Over the years, the five people have also cultivated diligently without any delay. Let them lay a solid foundation, and now the strength has not risen, it is only because of the bottleneck. It can be said that they have accumulated a lot, and as long as they break through this bottleneck, they can completely achieve a qualitative leap. I'll teach you for a while to get all five of you into Super Saiyan state. In addition, I will also teach you some unique martial arts. Yang Qing's words brought smiles on the faces of the 5 people, very happy. Excellent. The 5 people looked at each other with joy, and finally they looked at Yang Qing expectantly. Shaking his head and smiling, Yang Qing was also a little speechless about these 5 impatient guys. In that case, come with me. Afterwards, several people left here and went to an empty area. There are no trees in this place, it is very flat, but there is no edge in sight, and it looks very secluded. It's right here, just enough to spread. Everyone fell on the ground one after another, looking at Yang Qing curiously, wondering what he was doing to bring a few people here. The bottleneck is stuck and there is a way that is the best and the most efficient. As soon as the 5 of them landed, they heard Yang Qing's indifferent words and couldn't help but look at him. Pressure, infinite pressure. The bottle tightly plugged by the stopper may be difficult to open from the outside, but as long as the pressure inside is strong enough, it may even burst the bottle. Yang Qing's tone was suddenly cold, his hair and eyebrows turned golden with a pop sound, and his pupils turned pale green, becoming extremely cold, which was the Super Saiyan mode. All 5 of you shot at me. In the battle, let you see the pressure and let you break through the bottleneck. For you, this is the best way. The eyes of the 5 people suddenly lit up. Fighting against a strong man like Yang Qing is the wish of every Saiyan. Every time they fight, they will definitely be able to get a lot of things. It's better to use all your strength, otherwise, you will die. In battle, I will never show mercy. Yang Qing's voice became even colder, and the huge pressure instantly enveloped the bodies of the 5 people, causing their faces to change. This is an aura that is difficult to describe in words. He seems illusory and has no substance, but it does exist. Infiltrated into their bodies, making them tremble all over. Go ahead. The faint words came out, causing the pupils of the 5 to shrink, and Karayat roared and transformed into a Super Saiyan under conditioned reflex. The other 4 were also under the agitation, and the momentum of the whole body swelled up. However, after raising their aura to the limit, facing Yang Qing's terrifying and seemingly endless arrogance, the 5 of them were startled at the same time, but they didn't dare to make a move, and the fine sweat on their foreheads seeped out. Tense body muscles tense. What? Don't you dare to take action. Yang Qing laughed, paused, changed his tone, and murderous intent bloomed in his eyes. Since you don't do it, then I'm welcome. At the end of the sentence, Yang Qing's figure distorted and disappeared in place. Be careful. Karayat roared, his eyes full of tension. Bang. At almost the same moment, Dadara's face changed greatly, and a mouthful of blood was spit out from his mouth. Boom boom boom. A series of voices came out, and Dadara hit the ground for an unknown number of times, leaving countless potholes on the ground, and then spit out blood, dazed in his eyes, and passed out. Dadara. The expressions of the other 4 people changed greatly, looking at Dadala who was lying nearly 10,000 meters away, with nervousness and worry in their eyes. The 5 of them spent countless nights practicing hard. For the 5 of them, they were the closest siblings to each other. I said, don't think that I won't kill you. It's a fight. At this moment, Yang Qing's faint voice came over, which shocked the 4 of them, and anger appeared in their eyes. They all saw it. If they didn't pay attention, Yang Qing would really kill them. The killing intent shrouded their whole bodies, it was so real that everyone felt. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. It was trembling and trembling. At this moment, they looked at the thin black figure that was only a few dozen meters away from them. Fear, tension and pressure appeared in their eyes. The infinite pressure is not only given to them by the opponent being stronger than them, but also a coercion from the soul, as if the former has completely suppressed them in terms of the height of life and the blood of the race. You are so disappointing to me. If that's where you are right now, then today, you will surely die. Yang Qing's ruthless voice rippling out, and in an instant, his figure suddenly disappeared. The cold and ruthless words entered the ears of the 4, making them tremble at this moment as if they were facing a desperate situation between life and death. But in the next moment, their eyes suddenly turned blood red. Can't die. I don't want to die. And Dara, he was beaten like that by you. Even if you are our master, we will never forgive you. The four of them roared loudly, and the aura on their bodies swelled up again, and their fear of Yangqing actually dissipated a little. Chapter 635 Facing the scene of the four apprentices, a smile appeared on Yangqing's face, but it disappeared in a blink of an eye and turned cold. At the next moment, Duo Li, the most delicate and angriest of the four, clenched her fists and attacked Yangqing. On either side of her, the other three were staring at his every move with red eyes. Karayat was even more focused at this moment, ready to launch a fatal blow to Yangqing at any time. Too weak. Yangqing snorted coldly, dodged Duo Li's fist with ease, then grabbed his right hand, grabbing Duo Li's right hand, and then suddenly exerted force. Bang! The earth shook, a human-shaped pit appeared on the ground. Duo Li was directly fell by Yangqing, and was printed on the ground. A large mouth of blood spurted out of her mouth, and her spirit was completely dissipated by the fall, fainted. Following closely, Stoyart and Ruolin also attacked. Yangqing's figure flickered slightly, two fists stuck out, and he quickly fought with the two of them, making a continuous sound of bang 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 bang. After only a dozen punches, the faces of the two were painful, and the bones of the punches were all broken, and they could no longer support it. At this moment, the most powerful of the five, Karayat, finally roared and attacked Yangqing. You're just fine. He smiled, his tone cold again. But, it's still too weak. Karayat's punch was at the right moment. After Yangqing's punch reached the limit, it was difficult to launch it at the moment of counterattack. In his mind, there was no way this punch could be dodged. However, just a moment later, when Yangqing's figure suddenly strayed and disappeared in front of his eyes, Karayat's face changed greatly. What? Impossible. He couldn't believe that even he couldn't see Yangqing's figure clearly at this moment. The same Super Saiyan, how could it be so different? With a bang, Karayat's body was directly blown away. His jaw was twisted, blood bloomed and fell from his mouth, and the whole person was thrown out quickly, flying out nearly 10,000 after a few meters. It slammed into the ground with a bang, and dragged it for nearly a kilometer again before it stopped. With just one punch, Karayat's face was pale, and he was a little shaky when he stood up again. Looking at Yangqing with an icy expression in the distance, at this moment, Karayat's heart was under immense pressure, and he deeply realized Yangqing's strength. This is simply an invincible existence. Who can defeat such a great elder? He punched Karayat. Yangqing turned around and walked towards Ruolin and Stoyat again. Seeing Yangqing shift the target, the two people changed color at the same time. They quickly stretched out the other hand that was still intact. A qigong wave of boom converged, and then quickly moved towards Yangqing. Huh! The harsh sound of breaking the air sounded. Yangqing narrowed his eyes, and the corner of his mouth showed a trace of disdain. Suddenly, his figure accelerated, without evading the qigong wave coming towards him. A fist slammed out. Bang bang. Two explosions came out, and in an instant, Yangqing had rushed out of the flames and came to the two of Stoyart. Just this level, it doesn't work for me. Suddenly, two arms stretched out at the same time and grabbed the necks of the two, causing fear and panic to appear on the faces of the two. Boom. The next second, Yangqing slammed both hands towards the ground. The dust was raised, and the two were directly planted into the ground, with blood spurting out from their mouths, and there was no trace of fighting power. In less than a dozen seconds, the five most powerful warriors among the Saiyans were directly knocked to the ground by Yangqing like the autumn wind swept the leaves, without the ability to resist. It has to be said that Yangqing has really stood on the position of the strongest combat power in the universe after experiencing the Battle of Abinos. Even if he went to look for the King God, it would be very difficult for him to find his opponent. With the same dimensional level as Kaiwang, combined with the full power of Super Saiyan 2, his power is not much different from Kaiwang God, and even, faintly, he has surpassed at this moment. When he touched the third stage of the Super Saiyan again, at that time, his power was far beyond the current supreme god of the universe, the King God. Unless some old guy like Destruction comes out, no one will be his opponent. Too strong. How can it be so powerful? Standing in the distance, Kurayat, who was trembling all over, looked at Yang Qing at the moment, almost speechless. He thought that after so many years of hard training, he had transformed into a Super Saiyan, and he had narrowed the gap with his master, but where did he expect that after the real battle, he was shocked to find that even at the same transformation level underneath, the strength of the other party is almost thousands of times that of himself, and it is simply a power that he cannot understand. Kurayat finally understood that while he was strong, his master was advancing at a more terrifying speed than him. How can I beat him? No, how many more punches can I take? Feeling the unbearable pain in the cells of his body, Kurayat's whole body trembled. When Yang Qing turned around and stared at him, Kurayat trembled again. You have disappointed me so much, Kurayat. The harsh words rang in Kurayat's ear, making him confused. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Shocked, he realized in a blink of an eye. No, I shouldn't be afraid. Even if I die in battle, I shouldn't be afraid. I am a proud Saiyan. Raising his head again, Kurayat's eyes flashed fiercely. He suppressed the pain in his body and let out a loud drink. Exploding. With a boom, the golden arrogance on Kurayat's body boiled again, 3 times stronger than before. I want to fight. With another roar, Kurayat rushed towards Yang Qing. His violent aura and terrifying speed instantly drove the gust of wind to roar, and golden lightning and flames surrounded him. At this moment, he was as imposing as a rainbow. Oh, interesting. Looking at the suddenly strong Kurayat, Yang Qing smiled. Gently, he clenched his fists. Let you see what despair is. Your pressure will be even greater. Buzz. In the blink of an eye, Kurayat was already close to him, and in the roar, he frantically threw his most powerful punch. At the same moment, Yang Qing suddenly punched. Chapter 636-7 Super Saiyans. The power carried by both fists can instantly destroy a small mountain, swept through the air at this moment, making the void hum and tremble. Vaguely, you can even see that the void in front of their fists is twisting, spinning, and layers of cyclones are spreading out towards the outside. This is a reaction driven by the power being too powerful to the extreme. Huh! 2 sharp voices came out, and at the next moment, Yang Qing's fist came first, as if it surpassed the space, and directly arrived in front of Kurayat's eyes, causing the latter's pupils to shrink and his heart to beat violently. So fast. His fist is very powerful, and his speed has reached his peak. However, it is still not enough. In terms of hard power, he is too far from his master. Bang! The dull voice sounded, and Kurayat's extremely fast body froze suddenly, stagnating in the air. His right hand still kept swinging, but a fist on his cheek had hit it hard. Buzz! After this punch, the ground with a radius of 1,000 meters was suddenly shaken, and dust was raised. Immediately following, you can see that Kurayat's body, which was rushing forward before, suddenly retreated again. Boom! The ground trembled again, and Kurayat slammed into the ground, kicking up dust. A terrifying energy shot out, forming a body shape around him. Cough cough. Blood was continuously spitting out of his mouth, and the breath on Kurayat's body suddenly wilted and became weak. In the head-on collision with Yang Qing, he did not lack courage, but he lacked powerful strength. He is far from Yang Qing's opponent. He has hard power and many complex joints. Glancing around, looking at the 5 apprentices who had been dealt with neatly by him, Yang Qing returned to his original appearance. Ling Yi. He called out, and soon, Ling Yi, who was shocked and speechless, landed quickly. You bring these 5 guys back with Seiya. After speaking, Yang Qing got up and flew, floating up. Tell them the next fight is in 3 days. Ling Yi's eyes widened, watching Yang Qing's figure disappear quickly. he couldn't help but smile bitterly. These 5 guys, some of them suffer now. Seiya also landed from the sky at this time, looking at the 5 people who fell to the ground and passed out collectively, with gloating on his face. Haha, do these 5 guys really think my strength is for nothing? There's a good show to watch now. The 2 lifted the 5 people against their shoulders, brought them back, and put them in the recuperation tank. It wasn't until 3 days later, when the 5 of them just woke up, they were informed that Yang Qing was already waiting for them at the previous place. In an instant, the faces of the 5 people turned blue. "Master, are you really going to kill us?" Daedalus said in fear. He couldn't forget the fatal blow. Just one punch would cost him half his life. If it wasn't for the recuperation tank, I'm afraid he would have died and couldn't die any longer. "Let's go. Didn't you realize that your strength has increased after this defeat?" Stoyart squeezed his fists and said coldly. "When you say that, it seems like it's true." Daedalus was stunned for a moment, then felt himself. "My combat power has increased by about 10,000, my god. So stop talking nonsense and go." This time, the 5 people had expectant expressions on their faces, because they found that after being beaten, although it was painful, the improvement in strength was incredible. This time, the battle was still quickly resolved. But after being resurrected again, the fighting power of the 5 people increased again. This cycle continued until half a year later. The strength of the 5 people had all reached more than 100,000. The most powerful Goliath has a combat power of 170,000 or 80,000 at this time, and it is only a little worse than Seiya. On this day, everyone was still in the area where they fought for the first time. The wind was howling. Yang Qing took one side. The 5 people stood together, staring at Yang Qing. Compared to the first time, at this time, what flickered in their eyes was no longer fear, but excitement and anticipation. In the 6 months of fighting, their progress has been very fast. In addition to being spiked at the beginning, the further back they went, the longer they persisted. And every time they persisted for a long breath, it represented a huge leap in their strength. By this time, they had been able to fight with Yang Qing for a minute with 5 people together. This is not to say that Yang Qing let them, but the 5 of them go together, and they can indeed fight against Yang Qing for a short time. Today, you don't have to fight. From today onwards, the 5 of you, except for Kurayat, the other 4 will try to transform into Super Saiyans. Yang Qing said lightly, and then he looked at Kurayat again. You, transform into a Super Saiyan, and when you can't hold on, cancel your Saiyan state. In daily life, also maintain the state of Super Saiyan. The indifferent words surprised all 5 people, especially Kurayat. He knew in his heart that although Super Saiyans are powerful, their burden on the body is extremely heavy, but now, the Great Elder actually let him use Super Saiyans in his daily life. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The 5 did not object to Yang Qing's order. 3 days later, Stoyat was transformed into a Super Saiyan. Another day later, Dodori succeeded, followed by Dadara successfully transformed, and finally, a week later, Ruolin also successfully transformed into a Super Saiyan people. By this time, Yang Qing's 5 apprentices have all been able to complete the transformation of Super Saiyans, and their strength has taken a qualitative leap. On the other hand, Kurayat is undergoing difficult training, transforming into a Super Saiyan, doing some extremely meticulous work, such as moving tables and chairs, eating and so on. What surprised everyone was that in the state of Super Saiyan, he couldn't even complete these most meticulous things. Super Saiyan, suddenly increase your power nearly 50 times, powerful power, but you can't control it. Right now, what you're training for is to master this power completely. Yang Qing explained softly, so that Kurayat and the other 4 also understood. The 4 of you, the next training is the same. Immediately after, he said to the 4. And Seiya, who has been watching dramas for a long time, is also serious at this time. He has also tried this training method, but it is not over yet. Chapter 637 Birth. I once heard Yang Qing mention that this is the training that must be experienced to enter the first stage of Super Saiyan consummation. If you can't control any of your own power perfectly, it's difficult to enter a higher level. With a poof, Saya also transformed into a Super Saiyan state, and his cultivation is far from over. As time went by, Yang Qing taught several of his apprentices every day. Their strength is rapidly improving, and at the same time, everyone is starting to step out of their own fighting style under Yang Qing's reminder. At the time when Qing became peaceful and his strength rose rapidly, on a azure planet in the far edge of the universe, an incredible thing was going on at the moment. Drip drip drip. The cold mechanical report sounded quickly. In the basement, a group of scientists in white coats had solemn and serious expressions. They acted quickly and were busy anxiously. Today is the moment when he was born. Be alert and take all protective measures. Tanis said sternly. He arranged the important points one by one according to the important points listed in the book. In the cultivation room, 467 fully automatic gun barrels and 1,300 automatic rifles are all ready. The underground laboratory covers an area of 3,000 square meters. It has been completely covered by lasers and can protect against all unstable attacks. Even if an army comes to attack us, it will not be successful. All the indicators of the mother's body are normal, and the baby in the body is not yet conscious at this time, and is still sleeping. In our laboratory, more than 300 scientists are all ready. As long as you give an order, you can start delivering babies immediately. The mother's body has endured to the limit, and it may give birth at any time. The mixed voices in the ears kept ringing, and Tana's eyes flashed, thinking quickly. Qing is not there, and there is a lack of someone who can accurately compare, but this side can't delay any longer. After frowning and thinking for a minute, Tanis stroked his thoughts again and checked all the preparation procedures. Then, his eyes narrowed and he waved his hand. Start preparing. New life form, deliver. In an instant, the entire laboratory was enveloped by a tense atmosphere. The scientists walked back and forth quickly, and there were people staring at the computer testing data, watching without blinking, not daring to miss the slightest change. In the cultivation room, 6 people immediately walked into the room, wearing masks and hoods, and began to work towards the mother body. Head, I have seen the head. Strength, force, it's about to be born. Do all the measures, and new life will come out. Tanis looked at everything in the cultivation room through the glass cover, and his expression was also very nervous. This is a big step for science. If this time is really successful, it will represent a huge step forward for human genes. From now on, even if there is no Saiyan gene, then the Earthlings are likely to rely on his experiment. Data, on the road to become stronger. This is an attempt by a god. It is a test for mankind to embark on the road of becoming a god. I named this experiment Becoming a God. All the scientific staff on the side were anxiously and seriously staring at the delivery process. Slowly, the head came out, then the body, and finally the legs and the legs. The whole process, the mother's pain is very, but no one cares. Because they know very well that as long as the baby is separated from the mother's body, then his so-called parents will surely die. The process lasted for about an hour. When the baby came out, there was no cry, which surprised the whole laboratory. What's the matter? Why didn't you cry? Tanis roared angrily. Did this test fail? After so many years, how many resources were spent, how long it took, and after countless deductions, it was obvious that it was successful. Did it fail? Tanis, the test was successful. This baby, he has life and consciousness. At this moment, another blonde old man who was holding a newborn baby in the breeding room said, trembling and shaking, his eyes were full of excitement. What? Tanis was shocked, and then looked at the person beside him. The man reacted immediately and controlled the camera to point at the blonde old man holding the baby in the laboratory. In an instant, the appearance of the newborn baby was seen by Tanis, and then he also trembled all over, and couldn't help being excited. The black and white eyes are as clear as a river, and the pair of smart eyes are moving around, as if they contain curiosity, interest, and all the thirst for knowledge in this strange world. In addition, what surprised the scientists was that the baby's hair was a strange mix of red and black. This is his natural hair body. After being separated from the mother's body, it grows out quickly, and then the hairstyle is fixed. Behind him, there is a long tail, swinging around, looking very cute. Success. At this moment, the scientists in the laboratory were a little sluggish and excited. Someone quickly typed the next line on the computer and recorded the new baby. The hair is black and red, the pupils are black and white, smart and witty. He weighs 2 pounds and 5 tails, is 70 centimeters long, and has a tail length of 40 centimeters. His body is well proportioned, close to the golden ratio. After Tanis fell into endless joy. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Then there was a trembling voice, letting the blonde old man carry the baby out. Quick, hold it out for me to see. Be ready for everything to test his fitness. At this time, Tanis still did not forget to instruct others. A scientist nodded immediately, turned around quickly, and got the machine ready. When the blonde old man heard Tanis' voice, he immediately prepared to take the baby out. But at this moment, the baby he was holding in his arms suddenly burst into a circle of bright red light. Immediately afterwards, the current in the entire underground laboratory began to become unstable, and the sound of crackling continued to come out, but in an instant, a series of fine explosions sounded unexpectedly. The explosion caused everyone to panic, but the strange thing was that the sound of the explosion only lasted for a dozen breaths before disappearing. What's the matter? Tanis yelled angrily. Voltage and electromagnetism are affected, and we are still looking for the source. Soon, a response was received. Chapter 638 Weird. Tanis's eyes flickered, and he had a bad premonition in his heart. He turned his eyes sharply and looked at the cultivation room. The voltage and electromagnetism in the laboratory have always been very stable. In terms of experiments, they are very serious, and they will never allow any mistakes. For 5 years, there has been no such problem, but just now, when this baby was born, such a bizarre thing happened. This could not help but make Tanis suspicious, and at the same time, everyone else thought of this and turned their attention to the baby in the laboratory. My God, what is this? A cry of surprise came from the mouths of the scientists, and all the people present were stunned and stared at the situation in the laboratory, unable to believe it at all. In the laboratory, the baby that was originally held by the blonde old man actually floated up at this time, floating in the air like a ghost. What shocked everyone present was that they saw a curious expression on the face of the newborn baby. Generally speaking, newborn babies are unconscious, and it is impossible for them to show such an expression at all. But unfortunately, everyone present can understand the expression of the baby at the moment. The baby's body was surrounded by red light, like a layer of hot flame wrapping his body. And he just floated like that, looking around, and there was a maturity in his eyes that didn't belong to a baby's mind at all. Slowly, a smile appeared on the corner of the baby's mouth. Immediately after, he floated forward and came to the front of the glass mask. The smart eyeballs rolled and looked at the scientists who were watching him outside. The baby gently stretched out the fingers of his right hand. After 2 breaths, his light and thin fingers touched the glass cover. Crash! At the next moment, something that shocked everyone present happened. The solid glass cover shattered with a slap and turned into smashes. This scene shocked countless people to retreat, and there was a trace of fear in Tanis' pupils. He clearly remembered that the glass cover was strong enough to be bombarded hundreds of times by the rocket launcher without a single crack. It was produced by the most advanced technology in the entire Earth. This is not the crispy glass of ordinary families, but a special one. It is worse than diamond, but it is countless times stronger than steel. However, this clear scene was clearly displayed in front of him, which made him completely bewildered. Glass can't go wrong, Then, the weird thing is this newborn baby. Giggle cluck. A finger pierced the glass cover. The baby seemed to feel a little happy, and actually laughed. Go up and catch him. Tanis trembled in his heart and waved. There is a huge weirdness in this baby, but he still doesn't believe that the other party has the power to damage the glass that the bazooka can't destroy. It's just a baby after all, and with the power they've shown before, he's completely able to control it. Following Tana's words, 5 or 6 people stepped forward immediately. Children, come to my arms, don't run around. Uncle has candy, come to my arms, look, such a big lollipop. You're going to get hurt, come down quickly, darling. People stepped forward to catch this weird baby, but they were easily avoided by the latter. Moreover, the baby seemed to think that it was a very interesting thing for him to hide and others to catch him. He was having a lot of fun, flying around, but the person who caught him kept bumping into things. Seeing this, the baby laughed again, as if it was very interesting. Prepare the sedative gun and keep him under control. Seeing that more than 10 minutes have passed, and there is still no way to hold the child, Tanis frowned and waved the order. Immediately, there were more than a dozen men in security uniforms, all wrapped tightly around their bodies, armed to the eyes, and walked in with guns. Their guns are not live ammunition, but anesthesia for narcotics. The amount of this anesthetic is also a fixed amount determined according to the previous deduction. Just good enough to put a fussy baby back to sleep. At the moment when more than a dozen guns were aimed at the baby in the air, the latter turned around suddenly as if he had eyes on his back. The face that originally had a smile turned out to be extremely cold and gloomy at this moment. Hey! The corner of his mouth crooked, and this smile had a cruel feeling, which made the people present shudder. Aimed, request to shoot. The voice rang out, and Tanis waved his hand without hesitation. Dozen figures suddenly pulled the trigger, and the sound of bang 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 came out in an instant. At this moment, the baby in the air suddenly flashed a coldness in his eyes, and his short arm also slammed out. The crimson light suddenly spread, forming a dazzling rainbow barrier in front of him, blocking all the shells attacking in front. Buzz! As if everything was stopped, when all the shells touched the barrier, they stopped in the air and could no longer move forward. This scene shocked everyone present and swallowed their saliva. It was unimaginable that a newly born baby would have such an ability. And Tanis' heart shook violently, and his eyes were full of shock. I'm sure he's just a newborn baby, that is, all his actions at the moment are. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. Instinct reaction. And his inability to respond is so terrifying. What kind of monster have I created? Just when he thought so in his heart, the baby in the sky, the red light around his body swelled again, and a cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Faintly, as if everyone present heard 2 words. Die. Boom. The dazzling red light shone, and a small qigong wave was formed on the baby's fingertips, showing a reddish color, radiating hot rays of light to the outside. After a while, before the eyes of all scientists, the air began to twist, the high temperature expanded, and flames were born from nothingness. Their faces turned panic and fear in the blink of an eye, because they were shocked to see that when that little redness hit the ground, a terrifying explosion began. Everything in front of him was being destroyed, and a scorching explosion swelled out. The explosion was not big, but it devoured the entire laboratory in a blink of an eye. Chapter 639 Destroy Him. The skyrocketing fire engulfed the entire underground laboratory in an instant. The sound of crackling kept ringing, and panic calls came one after another. Indistinctly, among these voices, there is also the gloomy laughter of children, which is creepy. Thick smoke billowed out from the vent, and was immediately seen by people on the ground, causing a burst of exclamations. What happened there? That's the Yi family's yard. Could it be on fire? At the same time, Yi Qi's expression changed immediately when she saw the thick smoke and thought of the underground laboratory. There, it's an underground laboratory, is there something wrong? In the blink of an eye, Yichi immediately walked towards the place where the underground laboratory was located. She had to see for herself what was going on. It was about Yangcheng, and she had always been very concerned about it. In the underground laboratory, the fire had receded at this time, and a large area was scorched black. The explosion seriously injured more than 60% of the people. At this moment, they fell to the ground and screamed. Tanis hid behind a larger machine and looked at the weird baby still floating in the air. His pupils contracted and his whole body was shaking slightly. He was afraid. This strange baby, the powerful force, completely shocked him. He never imagined that such a big baby could be so powerful. Just a ray of crimson light bloomed from the fingertips, and the entire scene became a ruin. What the hell is that? Tanis couldn't believe that just a mere organism could launch such a terrifying bomb wave. No, that's not a bomb wave, but more like an energy wave emitted from a biological body. But how can a biological body contain such a powerful energy? This seems to be beyond the scope of scientific explanation. Just as he stared blankly at the baby in the air, the baby suddenly smiled, let out a hee-hee laughter, and flew towards one of the computer operators. As he approached, the computer operator let out a terrified cry and kept backing away. Giggle giggle. Gloomy laughter came from the baby's mouth, and the computer operator sat down on the ground with a fart and a face full of fear. And, indistinctly, the baby seemed to express his disdain. His fingertips aimed at the computer operator again, and a crimson ray bloomed. With a poof sound, the ray had penetrated the man's body, causing him to lose his life. Then, the baby sat in front of the computer like that, as if he understood what it was, and his young hands kept tapping on the keyboard. Accompanied by his percussion, a series of words, sentences, and pictures appeared on the computer. And this weird baby is actually constantly imitating the words in these sentences, making ambiguous syllables. Tanis looked at the baby in the field in horror, completely dumbfounded. He could see that the baby who had just made a sound was actually learning the language of the Earthlings. Although the syllables he uttered were vague, they were still close to the original syllables, and as time passed, the baby's syllables became more and more pronounced. The more standard. This is the monster. He finally discovered that what he created was not a god, but an evil and terrifying monster. The abnormality and strangeness of this monster has far exceeded his comprehension. Because of the long-term experiments and countless experiments, Tanis has a very good understanding of this guy's abilities. Therefore, as he recalls, his body trembles and trembles more violently. I, him, you. The baby is still seriously learning the language in the computer. At this moment, his syllables are very standard, but they seem a little mechanical. But even so, this terrifying learning ability made Tanis even more frightened. After all those DNAs are fused, it seems that a more terrifying change has taken place. Tanis's hands were shaking so much that he couldn't control it, and his forehead was sweating. If such a terrible and strange baby walks out of the laboratory, it is unimaginable what kind of disaster it will cause to the world. Tanis, we forgot one of the most important things. At this time, the blond man who had begun to carry the baby also came over. His right hand was bent, his face was full of sweat, and he was enduring a huge cry. What, Doran? Tanis couldn't help asking. We forgot to let him recognize his master, and we didn't set how to control his organs or core. This is our biggest mistake. Doran said quickly, followed by a grim voice. Tanis, we must destroy him. Otherwise, this world will be destroyed by this guy. They have also studied the strength data of the great demon King Piccolo, but comparing the randomness shown by the baby just now with his age, there is no doubt that this guy is much more terrifying than the great Piccolo. Can't imagine what this guy will be like when he's an adult, or for a long time. At that time, I am afraid that no matter who, can no longer control the situation. Tanis's expression changed continuously, he was hesitating. Tanis, don't hesitate, this guy has no control, it's uncontrollable, it's too dangerous, it's a dangerous work, we have to destroy him. While he is not at his peak at the moment. Doran said anxiously. At this moment, the baby sitting in front of the computer can already pronounce it clearly, and the yin-yang slams, which is no different from ordinary people. In this short time. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. In it, he has completely mastered the language of the Earthlings. Destroy him. In the end, Tana's eyes became cold, and he said coldly, but there was a touch of reluctance in the corner of his eyes. After so many years of research, discussion, and deduction, the first successful case was about to be destroyed in his hands. Kowloon clutched his injured arm, said excitedly, then turned around and quickly stepped back. Immediately afterwards, after he ordered some scientists who were not seriously injured to act, the doors in the laboratory were all closed. This is to prevent unnecessary disasters from spreading out. The vents of the underground laboratory, the gates leading to the outside, are all locked at this moment, and no one can enter or go out. There is bound to be danger in the experiment, but this danger can only be limited to them. Yi-Chi just walked quickly to the door leading to the underground laboratory, and was about to enter, but found that the heavy door was closed tightly with a hum sound. Immediately, her expression changed. Chapter 640. My name is Shaya. Something happened. At this moment, Yi-Chi finally determined that something really happened in this experiment. He is also very clear about the emergency regulations of the laboratory, and naturally knows that the only door is closed, and there must be a major incident below. Before starting the experiment, these plans had already been placed on his desk. Each item is implemented after detailed discussion and decision. The big thing is bad. Inexplicably, Yi-Chi's heart was a little flustered. She quickly took out a pitch-black card from her waist. This card had been prepared for a long time. If the laboratory entered the key alert, when the door was closed, only this card could identify the entry. Quickly brushing above the door handle, the door made a beep sound, but did not open. Suddenly, Yi-Chi's face became even more ugly. 3-level alert, it has been locked inside. It's over. There is only one explanation for this situation, that is, what happened inside is completely beyond the control of scientists. They have embraced the belief of mortal and prepared everything to ashes. In the basement laboratory, Tanis held the walkie-talkie with a grim face and asked softly, "Are you ready?" "Everything is ready." Kowloon's voice came, which made Tanis' eyes flash, and after 3 breaths, he said coldly, "Let's get started. Destroy him." At this moment, the eyes of the old scientist burst into endless crazy light. After several years, he created a new creature, but it was not under his control, so that he had to do his best to destroy it. At this moment, the scientist's heart is not feeling well. In another secret room, after Doran heard Tana's voice, red light seemed to flash in his eyes. "Action, mobilize weapons, and directly destroy him." His voice made the scientists in white coats quickly operate. The sound of crackling on the keyboard, in the inconspicuous corners of the entire laboratory, on the ceiling and on the walls, countless black cannon barrels suddenly appeared. These cannon barrels are usually hidden, but at this moment, they are all revealed. At first glance, it was completely impossible to calculate the specific number, which made the scalp tingle and the heart trembled. Even Tanis didn't know that there would be so many cannon barrels here. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. This time, there shouldn't be any more accidents, right? Muttering, Tanis kept paying attention to the baby in front of the computer. Adam, Eve. Giggle, forbidden fruit. Hee, my name is Shaya. Giggle, the name is really nice. Nice. At this time, the baby's voice was clear. After he mastered the language of the Earthlings, he even gave himself a name. Combine the names of the legendary human ancestors to celebrate their birthdays. At this moment, the newborn baby, claiming to be a new life, showed an expression of joy. Suddenly, Shaya's face changed, a light green appeared in his pupils, and he turned around abruptly. As soon as he turned around, countless pitch-black barrels appeared in his eyes in all directions, making his cold and cruel aura even more terrifying. "Want to kill me? You are courting death." The icy and ruthless voice came out from Shaya's mouth with a trace of deep disdain. This baby's words are sharp and penetrating. Just as Shaya finished speaking, in the secret room, Daolun roared suddenly. "Shoot!" Boom 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 boom. The pitch-black barrel turned red in an instant, and countless shells were brewing, and then suddenly swelled and rushed out of the barrel. All the barrels were aimed at Shaya, who was sitting in front of the computer, and countless streams of light bloomed quietly at this moment, carrying endless flames of destruction. In front of the computer, Shaya's face suddenly became extremely cold. "Ah, you are courting death. Kill, I want to kill you all. Ant, you ants." Because he just mastered the language, Shaya's words were still a little unfamiliar, but his meaning, the indifference in his eyes, was clearly expressed. At the same time, a scorching light shone out from his fingertips, and a terrifying energy fluctuation came out from it. Boom! At this moment, the rays in Shaya's hands converged with the countless streamers in front of them and collided together. At this moment, the entire laboratory began to vibrate violently. The invisible air waves spread out in all directions, destroying everything that was blocked on the way. This air wave seems to be able to destroy anything. No one can stop it, no one can stop it. Swish! The huge machine vaporized directly, the walls melted directly, and Tanis hid in the incomparably solid secret room. At this moment, he felt the vibrations of everything around him, and his heart skipped a beat. Boom boom boom. The shells are too many. At this moment, it slanted out like rain, and waves rushed towards Shaya. At this moment, the latter's pupils are also wide open, the scarlet light around his body expands, and an invisible air shroud covers his entire body. That terrifying flame, air waves, was actually. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Completely infiltrated into his mask. Under the blow of a large number of shells, Shaya did not have a trace of scars on his body, but the coldness on his face became more and more serious. Anger began to burn in the heart of the newborn baby. Shoot! In the thunderous roar, Daolun's roar came again in the secret room, which seemed to be heartbreaking and hysterical. Because he clearly saw that under the first wave of intensive artillery fire, the strange baby was not injured in the slightest. While this made Doran fearful, his thoughts on eliminating this terrifying baby were also heavier. Such a strange monster must not be allowed to live. Boom 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 boom. A series of cannonballs poured out again. Shaya's eyes did not change, and the crimson qigong wave in one hand kept rushing out. The qigong wave collided with the cannonball, forming a continuous explosion, but the strange thing was that Shaya was not injured at all. Keep firing. Looking at Shaya, who has never been hurt, Daolun's face became extremely solemn. Waves of shells were tilted, the barrels became more and more red, and white smoke had begun to emerge. Gradually, Shaya's young face began to change color.